Chapter 32:44. You are really a despicable person. The young man glared at the old man and cursed. However, such cursing wouldn't change anything at this time. Despicable? It's normal to be unscrupulous in order to win in a battle. How can I be despicable? If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for being too naive. Upon hearing this, the old man smiled indifferently. He didn't think that his methods were despicable at all. Everything was just for the sake of victory. Moreover, this person had always wanted to exhaust him to death. According to his words, how glorious could such a method be? As soon as his voice fell, the old man didn't give the young man any time to breathe. He took a step forward and attacked the young man. Facing the old man's attack, the young man growled with an ugly expression. Damn it! However, his hand movements were not dissatisfied as he gritted his teeth and resisted. Although the young man didn't choose to surrender, his resistance was just delaying for time in the eyes of everyone. The strength of the two was originally evenly matched, but now the young man was seriously injured, while the old man was in good condition. Under such circumstances, there was no need to speculate too much about the outcome of the battle. Moreover, the old man was very experienced. Even if the young man wanted to use some tricks, it wouldn't be easy to succeed. The old man was also very steady. He didn't get carried away and try to kill the young man as soon as possible just because of the current advantage. Instead, he fought steadily and surely. Even if the battle dragged on a little longer, he still wanted to kill the young man steadily. The battle on the stage was no longer worth paying too much attention to. Below the stage, the atmosphere between the Azure Dragon Galaxy and the Fire Phoenix Galaxy was completely different. On the Azure Dragon Galaxy's side, everyone's faces were extremely ugly, as if water was about to drip from them. Who would have thought that such a battle, which they had the advantage from the beginning, would turn out like this? The sudden turn of events caught them completely unprepared. A loss was a loss. It would be strange if they were in a good mood after such a bad start. On the other hand, Xiao Chun and the others from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy looked very relaxed. There wouldn't be any problems winning this battle. Who will the Azure Dragon Galaxy send out for the next battle? It's hard to say. After all, the Azure Dragon Galaxy will probably want to win this battle. That's true. At present, everyone had already begun to discuss the next battle. It was obvious how confident they were in their hearts. This was indeed the case. After half an hour, the battle was over. The old man finally succeeded in killing the young man. The young man's eyes were wide open. Even though he was already dead, one could still see his unwillingness. He died unwillingly, and he lost unwillingly. Unfortunately, no matter how unwillingly he was, it was all over. The old man exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and slowly walked down the ring. He came to the side of Xiao Chun and the others and smiled. Now that the first battle was over, it was time for the second battle. The candidates for the second battle were obviously very important. As such, the Azure Dragon Galaxy was still debating over who to send out for the battle. We must win the second battle. If we lose 2 battles in a row, it'll be too embarrassing. That's right. Let me go. I'll definitely kill those ants from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. I'll go. 0-inch. Everyone took the initiative to ask to go on stage. For a moment, no one paid attention. Just as everyone was arguing, an old man at the back of the crowd who had not spoken until now slowly walked to the front of the crowd. Let this old man go. Following the old man's words, everyone's argument instantly stopped. After a few breaths of silence, everyone came back to their senses and spoke up excitedly. Elder of Arrays, this is only the second battle, and you're going to fight yourself? It's a bit too early. That's right. It's not yet time for the Elder of Arrays to take action. We can go. Seeing everyone's attitude toward the old man, it was not difficult to see that his status was not low. At least among the many kings in the Azure Dragon Galaxy, he should be very prestigious. In reality, this was indeed the case. The Elder of Array's strength was enough to rank in the top 3 among the kings in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. His cultivation level had long reached the peak of the War Ancestor realm. He only needed an opportunity to break through to the Emperor realm. He was the ultimate existence in the Azure Dragon galaxy. It was because of this that everyone found it strange that the Elder of Arrays was going to fight himself in the second battle. Logically speaking, the Elder of Arrays should not be fighting so soon. However, in the face of everyone's persuasion, the Elder of Arrays only smiled faintly. Didn't you say that we can't afford to lose the second battle? If I go on stage, I will definitely win. Although his voice was calm, it carried an unparalleled confidence. It was as if no matter who he faced, he was certain he would win. Even so, I still think it's inappropriate for the Elder of Arrays to fight now. That's right. All right, since this is what the Elder of Arrays thinks, then so be it. Everyone continued to argue. However, at this time, the middle-aged man who had been silent all this time suddenly spoke up. As soon as he spoke, everyone quickly shut their mouths. It was obvious that they were very obedient to the man's orders. The middle-aged man saluted the Elder of Arrays with his hands folded in front of his chest and said respectfully, "Thank you, Elder of Arrays. If that's the case, then I'll have to trouble the Elder of Arrays for the second battle." The middle-aged man's strength was stronger than the Elder of Arrays. Out of all the kings present in the Azure Dragon galaxy, he was recognized as the number one. That was why his words were so convincing. Even so, when facing the Elder of Arrays, the middle-aged man was still very aggressive. This meant that the two must have crossed paths before. Moreover, the Elder of Arrays might have helped the middle-aged man before. Facing the middle-aged man, the Elder of Arrays was also slightly surprised. Don't worry. After speaking, the Elder of Arrays stepped onto the stage and stood with his hands behind his back. At the same time, an elder from the Fire Phoenix galaxy also stepped onto the stage. This person was Chunjan. Out of the 10 battles, this was only the second battle. Both sides had already sent out the people who were at the front of the line to the stage. Whether it was the Elder of Arrays or Chunjan, they were the top of the kings of the Combat Ancestor realm in the Azure Dragon galaxy and the Fire Phoenix galaxy. They were far from being comparable to ordinary kings of the Combat Ancestor realm. The two elders looked at each other. In the face of the upcoming battle, their eyes were as calm as an ancient well. There was no trace of murderous intent or battle intent. There was only calmness. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 3245. Whether it was the Azure Dragon galaxy or the Fire Phoenix galaxy, everyone involuntarily gulped as they looked at the two people on the stage. This was only the second battle, and both sides had sent out such powerhouses at the same time. The Elder of Arrays and Chunjan were both at the peak of the War Progenitor realm. They were only one step away from becoming sovereigns. Such people were definitely the trump cards of both camps. However, they had been sent out in advance at the same time. While everyone was shocked, the Elder of Arrays and Chunjan also felt the strength of their opponents. With a bitter smile on his face, the Elder of Arrays looked a little disappointed. I thought I could easily win. I'm old and don't want to risk my life, but it looks like there's no other way. If that's the case, you won't have to fight if you surrender. If it were any other time, I might really do that, but I can't now. The two spoke calmly. They did not look like opponents who were about to fight to the death, but more like old friends chatting. They did not make a move for a long time, but no one below urged them. After a full 15 minutes, Chunjan was the first to move. He slowly extended a finger and began to draw a formation in the air. He was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, he had finished drawing an offensive formation. Go! With a soft shout, the formation flew toward the Elder of Arrays and enveloped him in an instant. Facing Chunjan's attack, the Elder of Arrays also drew a formation in the air. His speed was just as fast. Before Chunjan's formation landed, the Elder of Arrays had already finished drawing it. The two formations collided fiercely, and an enormous pressure erupted from each other. In the end, they canceled each other out, forming a formation in the air. Seeing the two of them make their moves, the crowd below the stage was stunned. Who would have thought that the two of them were both array masters this time? I'm afraid Chunjan has met his match this time. On the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's side, Wu Qin, who was the most familiar with Chun Zhan, said faintly with a smile. Forming a formation in the air could be said to be the most powerful technique of a formation master. It was also the most direct way to judge the strength of a formation master. As everyone knew, if a formation master wanted to build a formation, they must first have a formation plate, and it seemed that a formation could only be effective when it was drawn on a formation plate. This was also why many young Heaven's favorites carried a lot of array discs with them to save their lives. However, in the hands of a true formation master, the formation plate was nothing. It could even be said to be a burden. A true array master was different from ordinary array masters, who had to carry an array disc with them when they were fighting. They didn't need these things at all, because as long as they wanted to, they could completely set up formations in the air. He didn't need to rely on any external force. He only needed to rely on his own array Dao law to successfully inscribe the array. To put it simply, this formation in midair was like a martial skill. It saved him a lot of trouble and burden, allowing him to inscribe formations and use formations to attack in the shortest amount of time in any situation and environment. This greatly increased the ability of a formation master, but at the same time, it was extremely difficult to achieve this. At least in the chaotic Star Ocean, there weren't many people who could do it. Looking at the two array masters in the arena, they were continuously constructing arrays in the air and attacking their opponents. For a moment, it was as if everyone's understanding of battle mages had been confirmed. Who would have thought that a formation that was not suited for battle at all, which should have been planned before acting, would be able to erupt with such power? Against an array master who could construct formations in midair, even a powerful warrior would not have much of an advantage. Although they didn't know martial arts, the arrays that were inscribed in the blink of an eye were all extremely destructive. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already clashed with more than 10 moves. More than 10 arrays were quickly completed by the two of them, and then they attacked their opponents. They were like two magic machine guns, firing at full power. While they were inscribing, the Elder of Array's expression became more and more helpless. Chun Zhan's ability was not weak to begin with, and now he was also an array master like himself. This way, even if the Elder of Arrays had some tricks up his sleeve, he would not be able to use them. After all, they were both top-notch array masters, so they naturally knew the methods of array masters. If he wanted to use those tricks again, it would be impossible to succeed. I'd rather face other people than an array master. Sighing softly, this was the Elder of Arrays' true thoughts. Against other people, the Elder of Arrays still had many tricks up his sleeve. But against Chun Zhan, who was also an array master, he could only face him head-on. There was no possibility of trickery. It was a battle to see who was stronger and who would win. Battles like this were naturally more troublesome and cruel, but it was something that could not be helped. For example, whether it was the Elder of Arrays or Chun Zhan, the arrays in their hand were thrown at each other's heads as if they were free. Once one of them could not hold on and was enveloped by the array, that person would be at a disadvantage. What awaited them next would be a storm of attacks from the array. Being trapped by one array meant that there would be a second, and then a third array. There was no need to doubt this. Just look at the speed at which the two of them were inscribing the arrays. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were able to inscribe an array. At a time like this, no one dared to be careless, and they could not afford to be distracted. Furthermore, inscribing arrays like this was extremely taxing for an array master. It was not only spiritual power, but also mental power. Every time an array was inscribed, it would consume one's own spiritual power and mental power. And the first one to give up might be the time to decide the victor. In the air, arrays were constantly colliding with each other. Unlike the collisions of martial arts techniques, the collisions of arrays were even stranger and more difficult to predict. Some of the people present who had never seen an array master fight before were all dumbfounded. Array masters could actually fight like this. That was what they were thinking. This battle seemed to have opened the door to a new world for them. The contempt they once had for array masters and the thought that array masters had low combat abilities had completely vanished at this moment. An array master who had mastered the ability to inscribe arrays in the air could only be described as terrifying. At the very least, they would not be weaker than other cultivators of the same level. The power of the arrays inscribed so casually was enough to make one's scalp tingle. What was even more frightening was the time taken to inscribe these arrays. It was so fast that it was unbelievable. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3246. Both the Elder of Arrays and Chunjan moved extremely quickly. The onlookers couldn't even see the method they used to inscribe the array. Under the bombardment of such an array, the two's spiritual power and mental strength were naturally being consumed quickly. This was perhaps the only weakness of array masters, their lack of stamina. That was because inscribing a formation would definitely consume a lot more energy than simply using a martial skill. Furthermore, it would consume a lot more energy. Of course, in a situation where the consumption was several times greater, the power was naturally not something an ordinary martial skill could compare to. If it were an ordinary martial artist fighting with the Elder of Arrays, or Chunjan, it would probably be difficult to deal with them. This was also why the Elder of Arrays would rather fight someone else than Chunjan, who was also an array master. As the attacks continued, it was obvious that both the Elder of Arrays and Chunjan's breathing had begun to quicken. Fine beads of sweat had appeared on their foreheads. Huff, huff, huff. Their breathing became rapid and heavy. The two, who were originally still exchanging blows, suddenly stopped at the same time, without any warning. Originally, they were still fighting fiercely, making the onlookers nervous. But in an instant, the two old men seemed to have discussed it and stopped at the same time. What's going on? Why did they suddenly stop? Yeah, they don't seem to be injured. From the beginning until now, neither of their attacks have hit. Why did they suddenly stop? Regardless of whether it was the Azure Dragon Galaxy or the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, at this moment, they couldn't understand why the two had suddenly stopped fighting. They weren't array masters, so they naturally didn't know what was going on in a battle between array masters. In the face of the commotion below the arena, both the Elder of Arrays and Chunjan ignored it. Although the two were panting from exhaustion, their gazes were incomparably calm as they looked at each other. Phew, if I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have come up for this battle. Fighting against an array master is really tiring. Who says it isn't? If it's possible, I would like to drink and chat with you. Perhaps we can become friends. Unfortunately, you and I won't have such a chance. After a fierce battle, the two of them actually felt a sense of appreciation for each other. There was nothing they could do about it. There were very few array masters in the first place, let alone array masters like them who had reached the king level of the War Ancestor realm. Based on all the things that the two of them had shown before, they might really become very good friends. However, it was a pity. Just as Chunjan had said, there was no chance for them to meet under such circumstances. This was because from the moment they stepped onto the stage, it was destined that only one of them would survive. Hearing Chunjan's words, the Elder of Array's face revealed a trace of desolation. This was a worthy opponent and a friend that he had been looking for. That's true. Since that's the case, let's decide the final victor. All right. The conversation between the two of them confused the crowd below the stage. On the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's side, many people didn't understand what was going on. Neither of them had suffered any injuries, so why were they suddenly deciding the victor? How can these two people, who are almost at their peak, decide the victor at this time? That's right. Now is not the time to decide the victor. The crowd didn't understand. At that moment, Wu Qin, who was at the front of the crowd, spoke calmly. There are some differences between a battle between a Matrix Grandmaster and an ordinary warrior. Because of his good relationship with Chunjan, Wu Qin naturally knew more about Matrix Grandmasters than the others. Normally speaking, a battle between warriors, especially one at the level of the War Ancestor realm, could not be said to be a simple kill. This was because the vitality of a king was too strong. Unless there was a huge gap in strength or cultivation. However, this was clearly not the case for the Elder of Arrays and Chunjan. The combat strength of the two could be said to be evenly matched, and the gap between them was extremely small. Under such circumstances, it would often take a long time to decide the victor. Only by continuously exhausting the opponent's physical strength and spiritual power and causing their injuries to worsen could it be possible to achieve the final kill. Chun-Jian and the Elder of Arrays were both uninjured, so in the eyes of the others, it was simply a fantasy to say that the victor would be decided at this time. However, they didn't know that a battle between Matrix Grandmasters was like this. Unlike an ordinary warrior, a battle between Matrix Grandmasters was often decided in an instant. Even if you were at the peak of your strength, as long as you couldn't block the opponent's array attack, you would definitely be trapped by the array. In a situation like this, even a formation master would not be able to instantly dissolve the formation. What followed after was even more formations. In this way, the only path left was death. Therefore, a battle between Matrix Grandmasters didn't exist. It depended on who could hit the other first, and the person who hit the other first would have victory in their hands. This was because in an instant, with the Elder of Arrays and Chun-Jian's strength, they would be able to inscribe multiple arrays. If you couldn't resolve the array in an instant, then more and more arrays would surround you. The final result was needless to say. You would be killed by the array. Hearing Wu Qin's words, the crowd finally reacted. So this was a battle between Matrix Grandmasters. Victory and defeat really were decided in an instant. Just as the crowd was talking, on the arena, the Elder of Arrays and Chun-Jian finally made their move. However, unlike before, the two of them were still constructing arrays in the air. After the arrays were completed, however, they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they continued to construct the second array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. Soon, there were 8 matrices hovering in the air in front of Chun-Jian and the Elder of Arrays. They had inscribed 8 arrays in one go, yet they still didn't attack. It was obvious that the two of them were planning to fight it out. It must be known that after one finished carving a formation, it was extremely difficult to continue carving a second formation without releasing it. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chun-Jian and the Elder of Arrays had both finished inscribing the 9th array. Not only did they not need to inscribe new arrays, they also needed to maintain the previous arrays. This was very taxing on the two of them. Even Chun-Jian's face was pale, and he was sweating profusely. 9 arrays was his limit. He looked at the Elder of Arrays emotionlessly. However, when he saw that the Elder of Arrays was inscribing the 10th array, Chun-Jian's expression changed slightly. Chun-Jian was very clear about this. When the final victor was decided, whoever carved the most spirit arrays would naturally win. Therefore, there was no time to think. Chun-Jian began to inscribe his 10th array with all his might, begging for your collection, begging for votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 32:47. The Elder of Arrays and Chun-Jian both began to inscribe the 10th array. Actually, with their cultivation and understanding of the array Dao, 9 array formations was their limit. At this moment, in order to determine the final victor, both of them were ready to break through their limits and attempt the 10th array that had never been successfully inscribed before. As the two of them moved, it was obvious that as they continued to inscribe the 10th array, the previous 9 arrays began to fluctuate greatly. It was as if they would collapse at any moment. Therefore, not only did Chun-Jian and the Elder of Arrays have to do their best to inscribe the 10th array, they also had to stabilize the previous 9 arrays. This was because once the arrays collapsed, the consequences would be dire. At that time, the opponent would not even need to inscribe the 10th array. They would be able to attack directly. Therefore, at this moment, both of them were extremely cautious and did not dare to be careless. Large beads of sweat continuously dripped from their foreheads. At this moment, every step was a challenge for both of them. In the face of such an oppressive atmosphere, everyone below the arena stopped talking. It was as if they were afraid that if they spoke too loudly, it would cause them to fail. Although this was impossible, everyone was still extremely worried. Under everyone's attention, on Chun-Jian's side, the 10th array suddenly made a cracking sound. For a moment, Everyone from the Fire Phoenix galaxy was stunned. This meant that Chunjan had failed. He had not been able to successfully inscribe the 10th array. He had tried his best, but in the end he still failed. Chunjan had tried his best, but the Elder of Arrays had already successfully inscribed the 10th array. Seeing this, the corners of Chunjan's mouth curled into a bitter smile. He and the Elder of Arrays were equal in strength. However, at the final juncture, he had not been able to break through his limits, but the Elder of Arrays had. As for this result, Chunjan did not need to be told. He knew what was about to happen. Although it seemed like there was only one array between the 10th array and the 9th array, this one array was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It was not just Chunjan. Below, Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, Wu Qin, and the others all fell silent. "It's over," Wu Qin said faintly. Wu Qin said faintly. His tone was filled with helplessness and grief. He knew what was about to happen. He knew that his old friend was powerless, but there was nothing he could do. Due to the rules, Wu Qin was not allowed to step onto the stage. Furthermore, this was the body of the void slaying beast. If he made any sudden movements, not only would he not be able to save Chunjan, he would be the first to die. He didn't know how to express his feelings, but compared to the people in the Fire Phoenix galaxy, the people of the Azure Dragon galaxy were much more relaxed. That was because they all knew that the second battle was already in the bag. If Chunjan couldn't successfully inscribe the 10th formation, then he was already a dead man. Unlike everyone else, the Elder of Arrays, who was the opponent, looked at Chunjan, who had a bitter smile on his face. His heart was filled with complex emotions. He had indeed won the battle, but the Elder of Arrays knew very well that the reason he was able to win the battle was not because he was stronger than Chunjan, but because of luck. If not for his good luck, no one knew what would have happened. Alas, sighing softly, the Elder of Arrays did not know what to say at the moment. The Elder of Arrays felt a sense of empathy towards Chunjan. If the two of them had been born in the same galaxy, whether it was the Azure Dragon galaxy or the Fire Phoenix galaxy, they would have become very good friends. But there was no other way. Fate made fools of people. The two of them, who appreciated each other, were born in different galaxies. In the face of the Elder of Arrays' sigh, Chunjan smiled freely. "There's no need for that. Go all out. That's the greatest respect you can give to your opponent, isn't it?" In the face of death, Chunjan did not beg for mercy, nor was he afraid. The Elder of Arrays was able to break through his own limits. That was the will of the heavens, and there was nothing else to say. Hearing this, the Elder of Arrays took a long look at Chunjan. He really wanted to be friends with him, drinking and chatting merrily. That should be a very refreshing feeling. Very well. Nodding, the Elder of Arrays waved his hand, and the 10 formations immediately enveloped Chunjan. Seeing this, Chunjan did not choose to surrender. Even though he knew that he would lose in the end, Chunjan still chose to go all out. The two formations collided fiercely. As expected, 18 of the formations canceled each other out and did not cause any damage. As for the Elder of Arrays' last formation, because Chunjan was no longer able to stop it, it successfully trapped Chunjan within. In truth, for a formation like this, as long as Chunjan was given some time, he could completely break it. However, would the Elder of Arrays given that time? The answer was obvious. Just as the formation enveloped Chunjan, the Elder of Arrays immediately made his move. He set up formations in the air, and one formation after another continuously attacked Chunjan. The time needed to break a formation was definitely longer than the time needed to inscribe one. This was something everyone knew. Therefore, almost as soon as Chunjan broke one formation, the Elder of Arrays had already thrown 2 more formations at him. In this way, the number of formations on Chunjan's body naturally increased. Just as Chunjan said, to go all out was the last respect the Elder of Arrays had for himself, and that was exactly what the Elder of Arrays did. "Chunjan, let me send you on your last journey." As he spoke, the Elder of Arrays' attacks became even more ferocious. In the end, Chunjan's entire body was submerged in the endless formations. Under such an attack, Chunjan had absolutely no chance of survival. As expected, After the formation dissipated, Chun-Jan had already disappeared from the arena. Whether it was his physical body or his spiritual soul, they were all forcefully destroyed. Looking at the scene in the arena, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's side fell into silence, while the Azure Dragon Galaxy's side cheered happily. As for the Elder of Arrays, he stood alone in the arena. His gaze was fixed on the spot where Chun-Jan had been. His eyes were slightly red and moist, but he forced himself to hold back. "This battle is truly memorable," he muttered to himself. The Elder of Arrays muttered to himself and stepped off the stage. Although he had won a battle for the Azure Dragon Galaxy, he did not feel the slightest bit of joy. "Congratulations, Elder of Arrays. The Elder of Arrays is still strong. We really did win." In the face of everyone's congratulations, the Elder of Arrays did not respond at all. This continued until a middle-aged man came before the Elder of Arrays and asked curiously, "What is it, Elder of Arrays? You won this round." Only then did the Elder of Arrays slowly give an answer. "Yes, I won, but I also lost a close friend because of this." "Huh." As he spoke, the Elder of Arrays laughed bitterly. Just like the beginning, he returned to the back of the crowd and did not say another word. Begging for your collection, begging for votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3248. In the two battles, the Azure Dragon Galaxy and the Fire Phoenix Galaxy had won one battle each. However, the people of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy were obviously more disappointed. This was because Chun-Jan had actually died in the battle just now. As a peak battle progenitor realm cultivator, Chun-Jan's importance went without saying. In terms of value, the battle between Chun-Jan and the Elder of Arrays was obviously more important. If they had a choice, the people of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy would rather lose the first battle than let Chun-Jan die in battle. Although this might hurt the old man in the first battle, it was the truth. Moreover, in the battle between Chun-Jan and the Elder of Arrays, luck had played a large role. If the Elder of Arrays hadn't broken through his own limits, no one could say for sure what the outcome would have been. All right, now is not the time to think about this. Let's watch the next battle. If we lose, none of us will be able to leave. Wu Qin could be said to be the person who had the best relationship with Chun-Jan. However, at this time, he was the first to speak up. Now is not the time to grieve. There were still 8 battles left. No one wanted to stay in the body of the void, slaying beasts forever, so they had to win. While the battle between the two sides continued, far away in the center of the central region, there was a huge continent. This continent was very majestic, but what was even more shocking was that there was a huge palace built on this continent. A great hall that covered the entire continent. It was obvious how big it was. This was the palace of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's Star Lord, which was also the center of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. At this time, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's Star Lord, who had been in seclusion all this time, had finally come out. When they sensed this, 2 old men instantly appeared outside the Fire Phoenix Star Lord's seclusion grounds. Soon, the entrance to the seclusion grounds opened and the Fire Phoenix Star Lord stepped out of the light gate. His entire body was shrouded in the power of many laws. His entire person looked hazy, as if he really existed, but also as if he didn't exist at all. It was completely impossible to see the Fire Phoenix Star Lord's appearance. They didn't even know whether he was a man or a woman. Even his voice was the same. They couldn't describe what it was like, but it was still strange. However, to these 2 old men, they had long been used to it because they were the Fire Phoenix Star Lord servants. 1 old man and 1 old woman could be said to be the closest people to the Fire Phoenix Star Lord. Star Lord's affairs were almost all handled by the 2 of them. In the entire Fire Phoenix Galaxy, the 2 elders had a very high status. Even old man Dong Wang had to respectfully address them as seniors when he saw them. Of course, to be able to have such a high status, other than their identities, their strength could not be underestimated. It had been many years since anyone had seen the 2 elders make a move, but one thing was certain. Their cultivations were at least top-grade rulers, and their combat prowess could be said to be able to crush many rulers. Star Lord, Star Lord, Star Lord of the Star Lord. What happened? The star. Black Lady was the first to speak. The most serious thing that had happened recently was that the negotiations between the Fire Phoenix star system and the Azure Dragon star system had broken down. Although the Star Lord of both sides did not personally participate in this conversation, high-ranking figures such as Elder Master Bai and Black Lady had all participated. Moreover, all of their decisions had been approved by their respective Star Lord. In other words, they could completely represent the will of the two Star Lords. At this moment, the breakdown of their negotiations was no different from the breakdown of the negotiations between the Star Lord. However, the Fire Phoenix Star Lord did not seem to care too much about this. Or rather, he seemed to have guessed that this would happen and continued to speak indifferently. I knew this would happen. The Azure Dragon has a huge appetite. How could he agree to a peace negotiation? In fact, it would have come to this sooner or later. After saying that, the Fire Phoenix Star Lord took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Seeing this, Elder Master Bai and Black Lady hurriedly followed. The three of them quickly came to a quaint pavilion. It looked like an ordinary pavilion. However, if an outsider were to come here, even if it was a World Lord-level warrior, they would probably be shocked. This was because the power of laws and spirit chi here were too rich. Ordinary people could easily break through just by standing here without needing to do anything. It was definitely comparable to the top cultivation mystic realms. However, here, in the eyes of the Fire Phoenix Star Lord and the other two, this was just an ordinary pavilion. There was no difference at all. Leaning lazily on the main seat, Elder Master Bai and Black Lady were on his left and right respectively. Elder Master Bai personally brewed a cup of tea for the Fire Phoenix Star Lord and the two of them. Black Granny, on the other hand, continued to talk about the recent events. One was the ancient beast in the northern region. Although it was basically dealt with now, the Fire Phoenix Star Lord still needed to go there personally to completely seal it. The other was the appearance of the void-slaying beast. After hearing Black Lady's words, the Fire Phoenix Star Lord laughed with interest. It sounded like he was laughing, but no one could see what he was laughing about. Ancient beast? It's really dishonest. Every once in a while, it always causes some trouble. It's a pity that it can't be used by me and can't be completely eradicated. Even the Fire Phoenix Star Lord couldn't completely exterminate the ancient beast. This was the strange thing about the ancient beast. By the way, is there still no breakthrough in the secret court? At this point, the Fire Phoenix Star Lord seemed to have suddenly thought of something and asked. The uniqueness of the ancient beast naturally attracted the Fire Phoenix Star Lord's interest. Many years ago, he had already ordered people to secretly study the secrets of the ancient beast. This task was naturally handed over to the secret court. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a breakthrough so far. Not yet. Strange creature, just like the void-slaying beast. Did you mention the void-slaying beast just now? That's right. An entrance to the void-slaying beast appeared in the scattered star sea, and someone has already gone in. The entrance is now closed, and we have people guarding it. The void-slaying beast and the ancient beast were both extremely mysterious creatures. However, in terms of strength, the void-slaying beast was definitely superior to the ancient beast. The two were on completely different levels and couldn't be compared. The negotiations between the two galaxies broke down, the ancient beast riot and the void-slaying beast. This is really an eventful period. I'll leave the Azure Dragon Galaxy to you two elders. I'll go to the northern region first. As for the void-slaying beast, let's leave it for now. Anyway, there's no good way to deal with it. Well, it's just that this time, it's said that two kings from the Emperor Dong's palace have also entered the void-slaying beast. That little guy, Dong Wang, even specially reported it once. It sounds like he wants us to pay more attention to it. It's best if we can help. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommended. End of chapter. Chapter 3249. In the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy, only Elder Master Bai and Dark Matriarch could call Dong Wang a little thing. However, The Fire Phoenix Star-Lord didn't care much about this. Although Dong Wang valued the two kings of the Emperor Dong's palace, they were nothing in the eyes of the Fire Phoenix Star-Lord. Moreover, the void-slaying beast had already appeared, so there was no point in forcefully interfering. After giving some instructions, the Fire Phoenix Star-Lord headed to the northern region to deal with the ancient beast first. It was difficult for the outside world to interfere with the internal affairs of the void-slaying beast. At this time, inside the void-slaying beast, the people from the Azure Dragon Galaxy and Fire Phoenix Galaxy were engaged in a few more battles. There were a total of 10 battles, and 7 had already been fought. The Azure Dragon Galaxy had won 4 battles, while the Fire Phoenix Galaxy had only won 3. For a moment, the pressure was on the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's side. Everyone's expression didn't look too good. Therefore, the 8th battle was very crucial for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. If they still couldn't win, it was basically equivalent to losing. The remaining 3 people who had yet to fight were Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and Wu Qin. Therefore, without much thought, Lin Yun took the initiative to speak. "I'll do it." Lin Yun was prepared to fight the 8th battle personally. There was no other way. They really couldn't afford to lose this battle. Xiao Chun didn't have any objections. He had absolute confidence in Lin Yun's strength and believed that Lin Yun wouldn't lose. As for Wu Qin, he didn't say much. Just like that, Lin Yun strode into the arena. At the same time, a young man from the Azure Dragon Galaxy also walked into the arena. The young man's name was Zhao Lin. His strength was at the top of the kings in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. He was even stronger than the Elder of a race. It was obvious that the Azure Dragon Galaxy was determined to win this battle. As long as they won this battle, the Azure Dragon Galaxy would be in an invincible position. Zhao Lin looked calmly at Lin Yun and said with a smile, "You can't win this battle. Is that so?" The confidence that Zhao Lin displayed moved everyone. This was absolute confidence in his own strength. In the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, many people didn't know Lin Yun's strength, so they didn't have much confidence. This Zhao Lin is not simple. Will Brother Lin Yun be all right? Even Wu Qin muttered nervously. Although Zhao Lin did not reveal any aura, his instincts told Wu Qin that this guy was very strong, terrifyingly strong. In response, Xiao Chen only smiled. If even Lin Yun can't win, it's useless for any of us to go. Xiao Chen was obviously the one who knew Lin Yun the best among everyone. He was also very clear about Lin Yun's strength. Just as Xiao Chen said, if even Lin Yun couldn't win, then it was useless for anyone to go, including himself. Lin Yun and Xiao Chen's strength were on par. Therefore, if it was an opponent that even Lin Yun couldn't defeat, even Xiao Chen himself didn't dare to say that he could win. In any case, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy had already sent out their strongest combat power. If they really couldn't win in the end, then it could only be said that their skills were inferior. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Wu Qin didn't say anything else. He could only place his hopes on Lin Yun now. With a thought, Lin Yun's divine weapon, the heavenly dragon bone spear, appeared in her hand. Suddenly, a terrifying aura soared into the sky. Facing Lin Yun's pressure, Zhao Lin appeared extremely calm. Not bad. He didn't seem to be frightened by Lin Yun's pressure. In the next second, Lin Yun didn't say a word. She took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Zhao Lin. Zhao Lin suddenly stabbed out with his spear. However, facing Lin Yun's attack, Zhao Lin didn't dodge. He stood on the spot and whispered, "Space break." Then, the space in front of Zhao Lin seemed to have turned into a shield in an instant, blocking Lin Yun's attack. The spear stabbed into the space. It was just a few inches away from Zhao Lin, but it couldn't go any further. Power of space? Sensing this, Lin Yun whispered softly. The space around Zhao Lin was a little strange. It was as if it had been specially refined, forming a vacuum state around him. How is this possible? Seeing Lin Yun's attack being blocked so easily, everyone in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy below was dumbfounded. When Lin Yun attacked just now, everyone could see that Lin Yun was very strong. Whether it was in terms of speed or strength, she was impeccable. If they were the ones on the field, they wouldn't even be able to block one attack. They thought that even if such an attack didn't have any effect, Zhao Lin shouldn't be able to block it so easily. It was really too shocking, but it was the truth. After Lin Yun missed her attack, she didn't choose to stop. She continued to stab with the spear in her hand. Her figure was also constantly dodging and moving. Her attacks were like a storm that surged towards Zhao Lin. On the other hand, Zhao Lin didn't move a single step from the beginning to the end. He just stood there calmly, allowing Lin Yun's attacks to fall. However, Lin Yun's attacks couldn't break Zhao Lin's defense at all. The space around him was like a layer of solid armor that couldn't be broken at all. Facing such a situation, everyone was dumbfounded. If even his defense couldn't be broken, then wasn't the outcome of the battle obvious? The people in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy looked solemn, while the people in the Azure Dragon Galaxy were grinning from ear to ear. Lord Zhao Lin is really strong. Yeah, it's said that no one in the Battle Ancestor realm has been able to break Zhao Lin's defense. Even the middle-aged man who had been praised by everyone revealed a confident smile as he looked at Zhao Lin on the stage. With Zhao Lin taking action, this battle should be in the bag. As long as Zhao Lin won this battle, he would be able to seal the victory in the next battle. Zhao Lin's absolute defense is still as difficult to deal with as before. There are no blind spots. The void body is really terrifying. Even the middle-aged man secretly sighed at Zhao Lin's terror. On the stage, Lin Yun attacked fiercely, but in the end, she didn't hurt Zhao Lin at all. When Lin Yun's attack stopped, Zhao Lin said unhurriedly, "It's useless. The space around me is comparable to the strongest defense in the world. You can't break it." Zhao Lin had a confident smile on his face as he said those words. Perhaps it was because he thought that he knew how powerful Lin Yun's attacks were from the previous exchange. With such an attack, it was absolutely impossible to break through his defense. With Zhao Lin's special physique, even if he didn't take the initiative to do so, the space around him would always protect him. This was equivalent to him being in an invincible position, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3250. Zhao Lin had a void body and could mobilize the power of space. Techniques like the Space Guardian were only one of them. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Lin disappeared from where he stood. It was not a movement technique, nor was it speed. It was as if his entire body had merged with space. Without any warning, he appeared on Lin Yun's left side. At the same time, a short knife appeared in his hand, and the tip of the knife directly stabbed towards Lin Yun. His speed was extremely fast, and it was extremely strange. It was simply impossible to guard against. Facing Zhao Lin's attack, Lin Yun used all her strength to narrowly dodge Zhao Lin's attack. Zhao Lin did not pursue after missing his attack. Instead, he looked at Lin Yun with a sneer. "Space is my best partner, so you have no chance of winning." Zhao Lin had been able to ignore space since he was young. This was also his strongest point. With such an ability, Zhao Lin indeed had the capital to be confident. As soon as he finished speaking, without waiting for Lin Yun's reply, Zhao Lin launched another attack. Zhao Lin's attack method could be said to be unprecedented. No matter how fast the others were, they would at least have a trace to follow. However, Zhao Lin's attack did not leave any trace at all. It was as if his entire body had merged with space. With a thought, Zhao Lin could appear from any place or hide in space. In the face of Zhao Lin's strange attacks, Lin Yun was clearly at a disadvantage for a moment. She could only passively defend and had no chance to counterattack. Every time Lin Yun wanted to counterattack, Zhao Lin would directly disappear on the spot. This guy's ability, there's no flaw at all. He can absolutely ignore space. How can we fight like this? That's right. Lin Yun's speed is already fast enough, but she still can't hit Zhao Lin. This battle, when the people of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy saw this scene, they were all stunned on the spot. They were dumbfounded and did not know what to say. However, everyone had the same thought in their hearts, and that was that this battle was probably going to be over. This was because from the beginning of the battle until now, everything that Zhao Lin had displayed could be said to be impeccable. There were no weaknesses. To be able to control space to such an extent, let alone a war ancestor realm king, Even an emperor would not be able to do so. His expression became more and more serious. This was a battle that he could not afford to lose. Under everyone's nervous gazes, Lin Yun's situation became more and more difficult. This was because Zhao Lin's speed was getting faster and faster. No, it shouldn't be called speed. It should be called the frequency of his attacks. The frequency of the attacks increased, and Lin Yun looked more and more difficult to resist. Let's see how long you can last. Zhao Lin had obviously not reached his limit yet. He could still improve. He did not believe that Lin Yun could keep defending. Zhao Lin was extremely confident in his own attacking ability. He could ignore space and attack as he pleased. Just based on this, Zhao Lin felt that Lin Yun would not have any chance. As expected, under Zhao Lin's relentless attacks, Lin Yun's situation became more and more difficult. There were several times when she seemed to be about to be hit. Regarding this, Zhao Lin's confidence was bursting. Lin Yun dodged the attack just now. In less than a breath's time, Zhao Lin appeared on the other side of Lin Yun and slashed horizontally with his saber. Let's see how you're going to dodge. After a series of exchanges, Zhao Lin thought that he had long known Lin Yun's speed like the back of his hand. In his opinion, Lin Yun would definitely not be able to dodge this attack. This attack would be the beginning of him killing Lin Yun. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, as if he had already seen the scene of Lin Yun being hit. However, just as the blade was about to hit Lin Yun, something unexpected happened. Lin Yun, who originally seemed impossible to dodge, actually disappeared on the spot in an instant. Lin Yun disappeared, and Zhao Lin's attack naturally missed. The smile that had not completely bloomed froze at this moment. He looked at Lin Yun, who had reappeared not far away, in disbelief. How is this possible? Zhao Lin thought that the attack just now could definitely hit Lin Yun. Even if it was blocked by Lin Yun, Zhao Lin would not be so surprised. However, Lin Yun actually dodged it. Moreover, Zhao Lin did not see Lin Yun's movements clearly at all. How is this possible? Why was his speed so fast? Not only Zhao Lin, but everyone below the stage was the same because this was something that should not have happened at all. Only Xiao Chun was smiling. From the beginning to the end, Xiao Chun did not think that Lin Yun would lose so easily. Strange. There was also the middle-aged man from the Azure Dragon Galaxy. His expression did not change much, but there was an additional trace of fear in his eyes when he looked at Lin Yun. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Yun smiled slightly. Okay, the warm-up is over. Warm-up? You were warming up just now? How is that possible? Stop talking nonsense. Hearing Lin Yun's words, Zhao Lin was stunned at first, but then he immediately flew into a rage. Was this guy looking down on him? Under such a fierce attack from him, Yi Zichen felt a chill down his spine. Lin Yun was surrounded by danger several times, but now he was telling him that it was just a warm-up. With that said, Zhao Lin attacked again and attacked Lin Yun. But this time, the situation was completely different. Facing Zhao Lin's attack, Lin Yun seemed to be handling it with ease. If Zhao Lin's attack was strange and impossible to guard against, then Lin Yun seemed to be able to predict Zhao Lin's attack completely, leaving Zhao Lin with no chance at all. In the face of every attack from Zhao Lin, Lin Yun was able to dodge it exquisitely. It was completely different from before. This made Zhao Lin terrified. He did not understand why Lin Yun seemed to have changed into a different person in just a breath's time. Could it be that he wasn't serious just now? Just like he said, it was just a warm-up? Impossible, I don't believe it. Thinking angrily in his heart, Zhao Lin could not accept this fact at all. Just as he was furious, Lin Yun grabbed Zhao Lin's arm and pulled him out of the void. Impossible. He had the void body. How did Lin Yun find him after he hid in the void? Moreover, he was able to pull him out of the void by force. He was horrified, but he did not have time to think too much because Lin Yun had already stabbed him with his spear. In response, Zhao Lin could only retreat and barely dodge Lin Yun's attack. After retreating more than 10 meters away, Zhao Lin looked at Lin Yun with fear. The current Lin Yun was completely different from before, giving Zhao Lin an extremely dangerous feeling. This should not be the same person at all. How could Lin Yun be so strong? Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 3251. Zhao Lin could not believe that Lin Yun's strength had undergone such a huge change in the blink of an eye. Lin Yun, who was previously suppressed by him, had actually crushed him in the blink of an eye. Moreover, Lin Yun was still able to accurately find his location after Zhao Lin hid in the void. This was something that Zhao Lin had never encountered before. If Lin Yun could really do this, wouldn't it mean that his void body was completely useless in front of Lin Yun? The most terrifying thing about the void body was that it could ignore space. However, it seemed to be completely useless against Lin Yun. This was what made Zhao Lin the most flustered. He looked at Lin Yun in disbelief. Zhao Lin was unwilling to believe that this was the truth. Lin Yun did not continue to pursue after her attack failed. She looked at Zhao Lin calmly and spoke unhurriedly. To be honest, your void body is indeed not bad. At first, I wanted to try it out, and it did bring me some trouble. However, you have a fatal flaw. Fatal flaw? Hearing this, Zhao Lin did not believe it at all. In his heart, he was the most perfect. Whether it was combat strength or talent, they were all top-notch. How could he have a flaw? Moreover, it was a fatal flaw. Zhao Lin did not believe Lin Yun's words. However, Lin Yun only smiled and continued. You see, this is your fatal flaw. You're too confident. It's a good thing for a person to be confident. A person without confidence will never be able to become a true powerhouse. However, overconfidence will turn into conceit. That's not good. You can't look at yourself. You can only see your strengths, but you can't see your shortcomings. You can only be a frog in a well. I think you've cultivated for so many years, but I'm afraid you've never seriously learned a martial technique, right? In your opinion, the void body is very strong, and this is indeed the case. Therefore, you think that just relying on the void body alone can make you invincible among your peers. Those so-called martial techniques are just useless to you. Therefore, you've never seriously learned any martial techniques. You rely too much on the void body. Once someone can crack your void body, you'll instantly become a useless person. Lin Yun spoke unhurriedly. This was indeed the case. From the battle just now, every attack of Zhao Lin's was extremely reliant on the void body. As for martial techniques, Zhao Lin's mastery was actually very ordinary. It could even be said that Zhao Lin had only comprehended the spatial law. Moreover, Zhao Lin had not comprehended the space law on his own. With a void body, it could be said that Zhao Lin had been born with the space law, placing too much emphasis on his unique physique and talent, to the point that he forgot about his hard work. This was Zhao Lin's fatal flaw. Hearing Lin Yun's words, Xiao Chun, who was below the stage, also smiled slightly. In fact, Xiao Chun had already seen this point from the beginning. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Xiao Chun saw more clearly than Lin Yun. Zhao Lin belonged to a person who was seriously polarized. He had obvious advantages, but he also had fatal shortcomings. As long as one could grasp his shortcomings, then Zhao Lin was no longer a threat. We won. Xiao Chun chuckled. After Lin Yun said this, he knew that the Fire Phoenix Galaxy had won this battle. Zhao Lin had no chance of winning. On the other hand, on the Azure Dragon Galaxy's side, everyone naturally didn't believe Lin Yun's words. Only the middle-aged man remained silent. Oh, shameless boasting. I have the strongest physique, the void body. Why should I cultivate those martial techniques? You said you can crack my void body. I'd like to see how you can do it. After being directly pointed out by Lin Yun, Zhao Lin's heart burned with anger. He was an extremely proud person. He didn't believe that there was anyone in this world who could crack his void body. The void body was the strongest. It was a special physique without any flaws. This had always been Zhao Lin's belief. He had absolute confidence in his void body. He didn't believe that Lin Yun could crack his void body. It was absolutely impossible. As soon as his voice fell, without waiting for Lin Yun to reply, Zhao Lin directly disappeared and hid in the void again. He wanted to use practical actions to tell Lin Yun that what he said just now was just boasting. Seeing that Zhao Lin chose to take the initiative to attack, Lin Yun shook her head helplessly and revealed a sneer at the corner of her mouth. The void body was indeed very strong, but blindly relying on one's special physique would only blind one's vision. Everything is flaws. There is no such thing as perfection in this world. After saying this softly, just like last time, Lin Yun didn't wait for Zhao Lin to make a move. She suddenly swept the long spear in her hand. It seemed that there was no one in the direction where the long spear swept, but in the next second, what made everyone serious was that Zhao Lin actually appeared there. She saw through Zhao Lin's void body once. The first time might be a coincidence, but what about the second time? It could only be that Lin Yun had indeed found a way to crack the void body. This time, Lin Yun didn't even give Zhao Lin a chance to make a move. She had already found his location and directly cracked it by force. Impossible. After being cracked by Lin Yun again, Zhao Lin shouted in disbelief. How is this possible? How could Lin Yun do this? The confidence in his eyes had long disappeared and was replaced by a look of panic and confusion. Zhao Lin didn't know how Lin Yun did this. Among the countless people who had fought with him before, no one had ever been able to crack his void body. As long as Zhao Lin wanted to, no one would be able to detect him when he hid in the void. They couldn't sense his aura at all. How did Lin Yun determine his location? Looking at Zhao Lin's expression of disbelief, Lin Yun was extremely calm and said in a relaxed manner, "As I said, there is no such thing as absolute perfection in this world. Your void body is indeed enough for you to hide very well. Even your aura can be completely concealed. It's impossible to determine your location through your aura. However, when you hide in the void, there will be fluctuations in space. Although these fluctuations are extremely small and can even be ignored, and ordinary people can't sense them at all, there are always exceptions to everything. When you meet someone who can sense the fluctuations in space, your void body will no longer be able to hide." Fluctuations in space. Hearing Lin Yun's words, Zhao Lin was completely dumbfounded. This Lin Yun actually determined his location through the fluctuations in space. But was this really possible? What kind of perceptive ability did one have to reach to be able to sense these almost imperceptible fluctuations in space? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3252. Lin Yun's answer left Zhao Lin dumbfounded. He didn't expect her to break his body of the void in this way. Facing the shocked Zhao Lin, Lin Yun said indifferently as she walked toward Zhao Lin. She approached Zhao Lin step by step, as if she was taking a stroll. "Now that the body of the void is useless, what other tricks do you have?" Zhao Lin, who didn't have the body of the void, couldn't arouse Lin Yun's interest at all. Because other than the body of the void, Zhao Lin was too weak in other aspects. He was so weak that it was unbearable to look at. At this moment, Zhao Lin seemed to understand what Lin Yun said before. Yes, he had always placed all his hopes on the body of the void, but he had never thought that once he lost the body of the void, how could he fight with his opponent? He relied too much on the body of the void and neglected the development of other aspects. This was Zhao Lin. He was too biased. "It's over." When she was about 5 meters away from Zhao Lin, Lin Yun said indifferently. Then, she suddenly attacked Zhao Lin with a sudden thrust. Her speed was extremely fast. Facing this spear, Zhao Lin could only dodge hurriedly and instantly hide in the void. "It's useless." However, to Lin Yun, Zhao Lin's body of the void was already useless. The tip of the spear turned and instantly pierced to the left. Zhao Lin's figure also appeared in the void without any surprise. He was accurately discovered by Lin Yun again. Although he tried his best to block Lin Yun's attack, there was no joy in Zhao Lin's eyes. It was very simple. Lin Yun's spear caused Zhao Lin to fly out. This was the difference in strength between the two. Zhao Lin was no match for Lin Yun at all in a head-on collision. Or rather, the two of them were not on the same level at all. He forcefully stabilized his body, but before Zhao Lin could catch his breath, Lin Yun attacked again. Since she had already decided to end this battle, Lin Yun naturally wouldn't give Zhao Lin any more chances. Damn it! A huge sense of crisis enveloped Zhao Lin's entire being. Facing Lin Yun, he repeatedly had no way to counterattack. The battle that followed was indeed as Lin Yun had said. Although Zhao Lin tried his best to use the void physique to deal with Lin Yun's attacks, Zhao Lin was unable to do anything. But every time, Lin Yun was able to break it with ease. After completely losing the body of the void, Zhao Lin could only passively take a beating. All his efforts now were just to stall for time. It's over. Everyone could see that Zhao Lin was no match for Lin Yun at all. He was completely unable to deal with Lin Yun. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before Zhao Lin was killed. Everyone from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy breathed a sigh of relief, while everyone from the Azure Dragon Galaxy had a solemn look on their faces. Why? Zhao Lin's heart was filled with doubt. Was he really that weak? She didn't even have the strength to fight back against Lin Yun. However, no one could answer his question. Lin Yun also didn't have the slightest intention to pay attention to him. The long sword in her hand fell like a storm. Facing such a violent attack, Zhao Lin found it more and more difficult to resist. The injuries on his body also became more and more serious. Soon, blood dyed Zhao Lin's body red. Although he was still persevering, Zhao Lin's heart was filled with despair. There was no chance of comeback. Spear shadows filled the sky. Lin Yun's attack speed was extremely fast. It was so fast that people couldn't see how Lin Yun attacked. After some entanglement, Lin Yun successfully seized an opportunity and directly pierced Zhao Lin's chest. The terrifying spiritual power instantly destroyed Zhao Lin's physical body. Even his divine soul couldn't escape the calamity. Zhao Lin died. Perhaps before his death, Zhao Lin didn't think that he would be defeated so easily. In the hands of Lin Yun, he couldn't even stir up a small wave. After killing Zhao Lin and obtaining this crucial victory, Lin Yun's expression didn't even change. She didn't have the appearance that one should have after a great battle. Calmly turning around and walking down the arena, Xiao Chun said with a smile, "It seems to be very easy. It's indeed not difficult. His weakness is too obvious. If you go, it will probably be even easier." Xiao Chun was a sword cultivator. As long as he grasped Zhao Lin's weakness, it was indeed easier to kill him. This was the difference in attack power between the two. Overall strength, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were about the same. However, in terms of attack power, Xiao Chun was indeed much stronger than Lin Yun. Lin Yun's advantage was in her physical body. Hearing Lin Yun's words, Xiao Chun smiled slightly. Wu Qin and the others on the side also came forward to congratulate. Lin Yun won this battle. The overall score between the two sides became 4-4. This was naturally good news for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. After the Azure Dragon Galaxy lost this battle, no one was happy because both sides were back to the same starting line. Moreover, the next two battles became extremely crucial. If one side won and one lost, it would be a draw and the 11th battle would begin. If both sides lost, then the outcome would be decided. There were only two battles left. At this time, the candidates were already very clear. On the Fire Phoenix Galaxy side, Wu Qin took the initiative to stand up. "I'll do it." Brother Xiao Chun is still in charge of the last battle. After getting familiar with Xiao, Chun, and Lin Yun, Wu Qin also understood the strength of the two. Although he had never seen Xiao Chun fight, Lin Yun said that Xiao Chen's strength was almost the same as his. Xiao Chen's attack power was even stronger than his. Therefore, Wu Qin believed that his strength was inferior to Xiao Chun. Therefore, it was naturally the best choice for Xiao Chun to fight in the last battle. Because even if he lost this battle, as long as Xiao Chun could win the last battle, at least it wouldn't be considered a failure. After saying that, Wu Qin strode onto the stage. On the side of the Azure Dragon Galaxy, an old man quickly walked out. As for the middle-aged man, he had no intention of joining the battle. Clearly, he would be the final trump card of the Azure Dragon Galaxy and would be in charge of the final battle. The two of them stepped onto the stage. Looking at the old man from the Azure Dragon Galaxy, a strange light flashed in Wu Qin's eyes. Then, he said something that confused everyone. "Yang Zhou, I really didn't expect this. I also didn't expect that my final opponent would be you, Wu Qin." Both of them said the other's name immediately. Moreover, they seemed to know each other before. For a moment, Everyone from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and the Azure Dragon Galaxy were a little confused. As people from different galaxies, there shouldn't be any connection between them. Moreover, the relationship between the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and the Azure Dragon Galaxy had always been very bad. It was even more impossible for them to have any connection. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 3253. Looking at Wu Qin and Yang Zhou, who were like old acquaintances, the crowd was confused. How could these two people know each other when they shouldn't have any interaction with each other? Only the middle-aged man from the Azure Dragon Galaxy didn't change his expression, as if he knew the inside story. At this time, Wu Qin and Yang Zhou on the stage spoke again. I didn't expect you to betray the Fire Phoenix Galaxy back then. Everyone has their own ambitions. Betrayal? Hearing this, the crowd seemed to have guessed something. That's right. Yang Zhou was once a cultivator from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, and he had a good relationship with Wu Qin. Back then, Wu Qin, Yang Zhou, and the fallen Xinjiang came to the Scattered Star Ocean almost at the same time. At that time, the three of them hadn't broken through to the Battle Ancestor realm, but because their strength was similar and their personalities were very compatible, they got to know each other. During that time, the three of them became companions, and in the process, they also formed a deep friendship. However, no one knew what happened to Yang Zhou that made him choose to betray the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. He still remembered that the last time he saw Yang Zhou, he had only said a few strange words to Wu Qin and Xinjiang. My path is not in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. After saying that, Yang Zhou disappeared, and Wu Qin and Xinjiang found out that he went to the Azure Dragon Galaxy. What happened back then that made you make such a choice? Wu Qin looked at Yang Zhou with a complicated gaze and asked. However, Yang Zhou shook his head slightly and said, "It's all in the past. Let's not talk about it. Now that you and I are opponents, let's fight." Perhaps only he knew what happened to Yang Zhou. Seeing that he didn't want to talk about it, Wu Qin didn't ask again. Yes, the two of them were opponents now, so there was no point in talking about it. It was better to fight. The two of them revealed their auras at the same time, and both of them had reached the Battle Ancestor realm great perfection. Until now, the remaining people on both sides were the real powerhouses. At the same time, they took out their divine weapons, which were both long sabers. Unexpectedly, both of them walked the path of Saber Dao. Taking a step forward, they attacked almost at the same time, waving their sabers at each other. Seeing their movements, everyone present was once again stunned. The reason for that was because the two of them were actually using the exact same moves. Why are these two people's moves exactly the same? Cultivated the same martial skill. The two of them actually cultivated the same martial skill. While everyone was still in a daze, Wu Qin and Yang Zhou had already exchanged over 100 moves. In almost an instant, the two of them had completed hundreds of attacks. For a time, the arena could be said to be filled with saber shadows. Everyone could only see two figures shrouded in saber shadows as they fought crazily. Furthermore, the martial skills that Wu Qin and Yang Zhou had used were exactly the same from the beginning to the end. It was like cloning with different people using the same martial skill to fight. Unlike the others, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun had better eyesight. Other than martial techniques, Xiao Chun had already seen other things. Wu Qin and Yang Zhou's cultivation methods were exactly the same except for their martial skills. This was determined from their auras. Depending on the cultivation technique they cultivated, there would naturally be differences in their auras. It was just like Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Although their strength was on par, their auras could be clearly distinguished. However, Wu Qin and Yang Zhou were different. Their auras could be said to be exactly the same. Same martial skill, same cultivation technique. Interesting, Lin Yun said with a chuckle. The relationship between Wu Qin and Yang Zhou was probably not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Otherwise, how could the two of them cultivate the same cultivation technique and martial skill? Also, both of them have 100/saber body. At this time, Xiao Chun said, their cultivation techniques martial skills, and special physiques were all exactly the same. It was simply like cloning. Other than their appearance, there was almost no difference between the two of them. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Lin Yan finally noticed the two's special physiques and was a little surprised. It's true. These two guys, the battle in the arena was particularly intense, but at the same time, it was full of strangeness. It was the first time everyone had seen such a battle. It was as if they were fighting with themselves. Wu Qin and Yang Zhou seemed to be able to predict each other's next move accurately. Your saber technique is still the same. It hasn't changed at all. Aren't you the same? Hee hee. But over the years, I've not only cultivated the saber technique left by my master, I've also found a new path in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. After saying that, a black mist suddenly rose from Yang Zhou's body. This aura was full of evil. It was cold, brutal, and cruel. With the appearance of this aura, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun below the arena suddenly frowned. Evil cultivation technique? For the two of them who had come into contact with evil cultivation techniques in the eastern region, the aura that Yang Zhou released was all too familiar. This was because this was an evil cultivation technique. There was no mistake about it. They had already learned from Old Man Dong Wang that the evil cultivation technique was originally from the Azure Dragon Galaxy. In fact, it was precisely because of this that the relationship between the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and the Azure Dragon Galaxy was so bad. However, what was surprising was that Yang Zhou had cultivated an evil cultivation technique. Why had his mind not been devoured? Looking at his appearance, he should have been cultivating an evil cultivation technique for a long time. But why did he not feel like his mind was being devoured? Could it be that, like Li Shan, he also had some kind of treasure on him that could resist the corrosion of the evil cultivation technique? The appearance of the black mist directly pushed Yang Zhou's aura to the peak, instantly suppressing Wu Qin. Is this the reason you betrayed the Azure Dragon Galaxy? Wu Qin calmly said as he looked at Yang Zhou, who was like a demon god in front of him. As a combat Ancestor Realm King, Wu Qin naturally had some understanding of evil cultivation techniques. He was no stranger to Yang Zhou's aura and could tell at a glance that he had cultivated an evil cultivation technique. Therefore, Wu Qin guessed that the reason Yang Zhou had betrayed the Azure Dragon Galaxy was very likely related to the evil cultivation technique. However, was it worth it to betray the Azure Dragon Galaxy just to cultivate an evil cultivation technique? Did Yang Zhou not know the side effects of the evil cultivation technique? Yang Zhou did not change his expression at Wu Qin's words, nor did he directly answer. He calmly said, "Do you know what Master said about me back then? My talent was not high, and my achievements were limited. I spent my entire life in the primordial realm. As for you, you were a genius and deeply loved by Master. He even thought that you could inherit his mantle. The two of us were like two extremes. Although we both worshipped the same Master, we were on opposite ends of the spectrum. The difference was like heaven and earth. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 3254. Yang Zhou and Wu Qin were actually fellow disciples. No one had expected such a result. In fact, in the entire Scattered Star Seas, the only person who knew this secret was the fallen Qinzhan. Yang Zhou and Wu Qin both came from the Southern Territory and had the same master. However, Wu Qin's talent was much higher than Yang Zhou's, while Yang Zhou was like an ordinary person with limited talent. Therefore, since they were young, their masters had placed all their efforts on Wu Qin. In his opinion, even if he put in a lot of effort, Yang Zhou's achievements would be limited. At most, he would be at the level of an ancient life form. However, Yang Zhou's personality was very strong, and he was unwilling to accept his fate. It was also because of this that after their masters died, Yang Zhou and Wu Qin came to the Scattered Star Seas together. Moreover, in the Scattered Star Seas, Yang Zhou relied on his own efforts to break through to the divine Ancestor realm. However, this also brought about problems. Because of the limitations of his talent, Yang Zhou could clearly feel that the divine Ancestor realm was his true limit. If he didn't find another way, Yang Zhou would never be able to break through to the battle ancestor realm. He watched as Chun Zhan and Wu Qin's cultivation rose step by step, while he couldn't take another step forward no matter what. How could the strong Yang Zhou accept this? However, at this time, Yang Zhou accidentally came into contact with the evil cultivation method of the Azure Dragon Galaxy. As long as he cultivated this evil cultivation method, Yang Zhou could break through to the battle ancestor realm. Moreover, the evil cultivation method of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy could corrode a person's mind because it wasn't complete. It was deliberately done by the Azure Dragon Galaxy. As long as he could cultivate the complete evil cultivation method, his mind wouldn't be corroded and he could break through to the battle ancestor realm. Although it would shorten his lifespan, it wasn't unacceptable for Yang Zhou. He would rather have an instant of brilliance than be eternally ordinary. Therefore, Yang Zhou betrayed the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and went to the Azure Dragon Galaxy. It was because there was hope for him to break through to the battle ancestor realm. This was why Yang Zhou betrayed the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Hearing this, Wu Qin fell silent. Perhaps he had already guessed this would be the case, because he knew his senior brother's character too well. As soon as his voice fell, Yang Zhou didn't give Wu Qin time to respond. He raised his blade and rushed over. This was a battle that Yang Zhou had been looking forward to for many years. He wanted to prove that he was not weaker than Wu Qinrao. Moreover, after living in the Azure Dragon Galaxy for so many years, Yang Zhou had long since considered himself a member of the Azure Dragon Galaxy. Be it for public or private reasons, Yang Zhou had to win this battle, even if he had to kill his own junior brother. In the face of Yang Zhou's attack, Wu Qin did not waste his breath and chose to attack as well. This time, the two of them did not use the same saber technique, nor did they use the martial skills that their master had taught them. Both Yang Zhou and Wu Qin clearly had a unique understanding of their own saber Dao, since they were already at the War Ancestor Realm Great Perfection. Although they came from the same sect, there was still a clear difference between them. It was even more intense than before. Neither of them had the slightest intention of holding back. Being from different factions, the only thing in their eyes was victory. Xiao Chun, who do you think will win this battle? Lin Yun asked Xiao Chun thoughtfully as she looked at the two people fighting fiercely. With her eyesight, it was difficult to see the difference in strength between the two. It could be said that there was almost no difference. In response, Xiao Chun shook his head. It's hard to say. The strength of these two people is too close. This might be the battle that had the closest strength since the beginning of the battle. It should also be the battle that would be the most entangled battle. With Wu Qin and Yang Zhou's strength, it would be very difficult to determine the winner. In fact, it was indeed so. In the blink of an eye, a day and a night had passed. Yang Zhou and Wu Qin still had not determined the winner, and neither of them had gained any advantage. At this point in the battle, the two of them were still evenly matched. There were many wounds on their bodies, but these wounds were not fatal to the War Ancestor Realm Kings. As for the consumption, the two of them were about the same. Such entanglement, such an inextricable battle, made everyone present hold their breaths. This battle was really too intense. If it were anyone else, they would not have been able to hold on for so long. However, after such a long battle, the winner was about to be decided. It's coming, Xiao Chun whispered softly. This meant that the winner was about to be decided. As Xiao Chen's voice fell, Yang Zhou and Wu Qin, who were on the stage, attacked at the same time. This attack was obviously the killing move of the two of them. The attacks blasted towards each other at the same time and then hit each other's vital points at the same time. They were already heavily injured and had consumed a lot of energy. Now that their vital points were hit, the two of them spat out a mouthful of blood. Moreover, cracks had appeared on his body, as if it was about to shatter. Whether it was Yang Zhou or Wu Qin, the two of them had already reached their limits. Neither of them had the ability to continue attacking. Yang Zhou's blade pierced through Wu Qin's heart, and Wu Qin's blade slashed across Yang Zhou's neck. Terrifying spiritual energy raged wildly in the two of them at the same time. The two of them were already unable to stop such destruction. Their divine souls were also heavily injured and were almost completely destroyed. A dense aura of death enveloped the two of them. However, in the face of impending death, neither Yang Zhou nor Wu Qin had the slightest fear. Yang Zhou even said with a smile, "Master, do you see? I'm not inferior to junior brother." Yang Zhou had been proving himself his whole life, proving that he was not inferior to junior brother. For this, he had sacrificed everything, and now he had done it. At least, junior brother did not defeat him, and he did not lose. It was as if he had been liberated. In response, Wu Qin said, with a complicated expression, "Actually, Master once said that you are too eager to be strong. This is your biggest and most obvious weakness. Master said that your talent is mediocre, but he just hopes that you can understand that strength is not everything. There are many things in this world that are worth paying attention to and cherishing." Wu Qin knew that his master liked Yang Zhou. Although it seemed to be biased, in fact, his master valued Yang Zhou as much as he valued him. It was just that Yang Zhou did not understand. In Yang Zhou's eyes, strength was everything. As senior brother, he should be stronger than Wu Qin. Hearing Wu Qin's words, Yang Zhou was stunned, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. However, it was too late to say this now. Under everyone's gaze, Yang Zhou and Wu Qin's bodies exploded at the same time, turning into two clouds of blood mist. After such an intense battle, the final result was mutual destruction. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 32:55. It was a draw. Everyone fell silent as they watched Yang Zhou and Wu Qin die at the same time. The two of them fought fiercely for an entire day and night, but the final result was a draw. Everyone found it hard to accept such a result for a while. In this case, both sides were still 4 against 4. The final battle was especially important. Whoever won would be able to leave safely, and the loser would have to stay here forever and become nourishment for the void-slaying beast. Everyone in the Azure Dragon Galaxy looked at the middle-aged man. The man was called Mo Feng, and he was recognized as the strongest person in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. He was obviously the one who was responsible for the final victory. It was the same on the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's side. Xiao Chan was the last person to fight, so everyone looked at him nervously. It's not always good to be the last one to fight. Lin Yan didn't give Xiao Chun too much pressure and just said with a smile. Xiao Chun smiled bitterly. Someone has to be the last one. Xiao Chun and Mo Feng both stepped into the arena at the same time. The final battle was about to begin. They looked at each other at the same time. Xiao Chun and Mo Feng naturally didn't know each other. With a thought, both of them took out their divine weapons at the same time. Surprisingly, both of them were sword cultivators. Xiao Chun held the dustless sword in his hand, while Mo Feng held a black longsword. With their swords in hand, their auras instantly became fierce. Their eyes met, and Mo Feng said indifferently, "I've been paying attention to you since the very beginning. There's also that Lin Yan who attacked earlier. The two of you should be the strongest people in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, right?" Xiao Chun didn't answer, but Mo Feng didn't seem to care and continued to speak. "To be honest, I don't have absolute confidence in winning against Lin Yan. I can see the guy didn't use his full strength at all. He won too easily. But I wonder who is stronger between you and Lin Yan?" Mo Feng's words were not false. Among the many people in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, only Xiao Chun and Lin Yan could catch his eye. Lin Yan had shocked Mo Feng a little when she fought with Zhao Lin. There was no doubt that Zhao Lin's strength was not weak. However, even so, he was unable to force Lin Yan to reveal her true strength. Anyone could tell that Lin Yan had defeated Zhao Lin effortlessly. It could even be said that she had defeated him effortlessly. Because of this, Mo Feng did not have the confidence to defeat Lin Yan. As for Xiao Chun, although he hadn't personally seen Xiao Chun in action, Wind Void trusted his intuition. This Xiao Chun was definitely not simple. According to Mo Feng's own guess, Xiao Chun's strength should at least be on par with Lin Yan. Compared to Qin Zhan, Wu Qin was definitely much stronger. Although Qinzhan and Wu Qin's strength was not bad, to be honest, Wind Void didn't take them seriously. If he were to fight against either of them, Wind Void was absolutely confident that he would win. Only Xiao Chun and Lin Yun made Wind Void of confidence. However, in this final battle, he had encountered Xiao Chun, one of the two people he was most afraid of. Hearing Mo Feng's calm voice, Xiao Chun replied casually, "That's right. Who knows?" Xiao Chun actually didn't know who was stronger between him and Lin Yun. After all, in their usual spars, everyone would stop at a certain point. No one would use their true killing moves. Wind Void wasn't surprised when he heard Xiao Chen's answer. It was as if he had already guessed that Xiao Chun would say this. "If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to fight with you because it's too dangerous. As the saying goes, a gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall. I prefer a battle that I have confidence in." Wind Void's character was like this. He didn't have a strong fighting spirit. It had been like this since he was in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. Basically, no one had seen Wind Void fight with his life on the line. In his own words, it was too dangerous. After all, everyone's strength was similar. If he were to fight with his life on the line, no one could say for sure what the final result would be. It was possible that he would kill his opponent, but it was also possible that his opponent would kill him. Such a risky thing wasn't suitable for him. However, it was different this time. Wind Void had no way out. In the body of the void-slaying beast, if Wind Void lost, he would die. Only by winning could he live. However, his opponent was Xiao Chun. For a moment, Wind Void felt a little regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would have entered the arena earlier. That way, he wouldn't have to fight with Xiao Chun. In any case, apart from Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, Wind Void had absolute confidence in winning against anyone. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. This was already the final battle. There was no way out even if he wanted to. Sigh, it's really troublesome. If I had known this, I wouldn't have come in. Wind Void complained helplessly. Then, a scene that no one expected happened. Without any warning, Wind Void took a step forward and instantly swung his sword at Xiao Chun. Just a second ago, he looked like he had a deep grudge. No one could tell that he was planning to attack. However, in the next second, he suddenly launched a sneak attack. This was indeed a sneak attack. Even Xiao Chun didn't expect Wind Void to do this. However, at the critical moment, Xiao Chun instinctively raised his sword to block and successfully blocked Wind Void's sword. Wind Void's sneak attack didn't succeed. However, he still forced Xiao Chun to take a few steps back. However, it didn't cause any damage to Xiao Chun. After this exchange of swords, Xiao Chun's eyes flashed with surprise. This guy was very strong. He wasn't any weaker than him. Facing such an opponent, he had to be serious. On the other hand, Wind Void's attack didn't succeed. He immediately shook his head in disappointment. What a pity. I thought this attack would catch you off guard. I almost succeeded, but in the end it's fine. If this attack could injure you, then I would have the upper hand. Wind Void didn't mind his sudden attack at all. Moreover, he very calmly stated his goal. This attack wasn't to kill Xiao Chun. In fact, Wind Void didn't even think of seriously injuring Xiao Chun. It was enough to injure him. After all, the person who was injured first, regardless of whether it was serious or not, it would definitely affect him. At that time, Wind Void would have a slight advantage. It was a pity that Xiao Chun's reaction was faster than he had expected. He was able to block his attack without being hurt. Wind Void shook his head and smiled bitterly. In the next second, a sword light flashed. This time, it was Xiao Chun's turn to attack. His actions were exactly the same as Wind Void's. He didn't give any warning and attacked as soon as he said he would. The sword light flew straight towards Wind Void. Wind Void couldn't help but curse. I thought you weren't this kind of person. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3256. No one would have thought that Xiao Chun would actually give him a taste of his own medicine. The sudden sneak attack caused Mo Feng's face to turn pale. Lin Yun, who was below, shook her head and smiled bitterly. All along, Xiao Chun had never stopped using sneak attacks to deal with his enemies. However, This did not mean that Xiao Chun was an old-fashioned person. Since Mo Feng could sneak attack Xiao Chun without any pressure, Xiao Chun could naturally do the same. Same to you. Hearing Mo Feng's words, Xiao Chun said indifferently. He did not think that this method was disgraceful. Mo Feng could only smile bitterly at this. This kind of Xiao Chun was the most difficult person to deal with. If Xiao Chun did not use sneak attacks to deal with him, Mo Feng would probably be very happy. After all, this way, the danger would be greatly reduced. However, Xiao Chen's answer was very obvious. He was not such a person. Mo Feng was willing to use any method to win. Similarly, Xiao Chun was the same. The conversation between the two was very brief. Xiao Chun did not give Mo Feng the slightest chance to breathe. Before he finished speaking, Xiao Chun had already appeared in front of Mo Feng in a flash. His sword stabbed out at an extremely fast speed like lightning. Facing Xiao Chen's attack, Mo Feng frowned slightly. He did not dare to be careless and raised his sword to block. Only then did he manage to block Xiao Chen's attack. The two of them attacked at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, it seemed that there was no order to their attacks. What a fast sword! It seems that I have to be serious. Facing Xiao Chen's fierce attack, Mo Feng smiled bitterly in his heart. Long before he attacked, Mo Feng knew that this would not be an easy battle. However, Mo Feng felt that he had underestimated Xiao Chun. Facing such an opponent, if he did not use his full strength, he would not have any chance of winning. Do you know what the strongest swordsmanship in the world is? The expression in his eyes changed. At the same time, he said something extremely inexplicable. The strongest swordsmanship in the world? Has anyone seen it before? Or rather, who would dare to say that their swordsmanship was the strongest? In the beginning, even Mo Feng himself couldn't find the answer to this question. This was also the question that Mo Feng's father had asked him. Wind Mo was born in a large family in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. The Azure Dragon Galaxy was different from the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. The Fire Phoenix Galaxy was ruled by the 4 great imperial palaces and the Central Region Star-Lord. However, the Azure Dragon Galaxy did not have a royal palace. Aside from the supreme ruler, the Azure Dragon Star-Lord, the 4 great clans were the most powerful powers in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. The 4 great clans were equivalent to the 4 great palaces of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, and they all had sovereigns overseeing them. The Mo family that Mo Feng belonged to was one of the 4 great clans. The Mo family's great ancestor was also a ruler. With such a background, Mo Feng naturally enjoyed the best cultivation resources and environment from a young age. It could be said that as long as it was something Mo Feng wanted, there was basically nothing he couldn't get. Coupled with Mo Feng's innate talent, his cultivation journey could be said to be smooth sailing, and he did not encounter any bottlenecks at all the way until Mo Feng broke through to the Saint Ancestor realm. His father asked such a question. Feng, what do you think is the strongest sword technique in this world? The strongest sword technique? Is there really a strongest sword technique in this world? This was the answer Mo Feng gave his father back then. Regarding this, his father only smiled slightly. No move is better than having moves. No sword technique is the strongest sword technique. Just for this sentence, Mo Feng stayed in the ancient life form realm for 100 years. Actually, with Mo Feng's talent, breaking through to the Saint Ancestor realm was not difficult at all. However, in order to pursue the so-called strongest sword technique, Mo Feng stopped breaking through. In the following 100 years, Mo Feng only pursued one thing, and that was the strongest sword technique. No move is better than having moves. No sword technique is the strongest sword technique. Only after 100 years did Mo Feng truly comprehend his father's words. All along, many martial artists have been pursuing stronger and higher-grade martial skills. However, they had forgotten one thing. Martial skills were created by people. No matter how strong a martial skill was, it would have flaws. Furthermore, from a certain point of view, martial skills and sword techniques were like a cage. That was because they had moves, and you could only use them according to those moves. If there were moves, they could be broken. If there were no moves, it was equivalent to having no loopholes. A true sword cultivator's every move should be as natural as nature itself. Every swing of the sword would be a sword technique of its own. It would not be restricted by the so-called rules and regulations. It would make the sword a true partner that one could trust. Mo Fong still remembered the 100 years he had spent in the Mo clan. He had always been in the back mountain of the Mo clan, swinging the sword in his hand day after day. There were no moves. In fact, he could not find the slightest similarity between every swing of the sword. He had tried countless ways to swing the sword. It was during this process that Mo Fong truly broke the restrictions on his body. Sword techniques were natural. Why should one be restricted by those so-called sword techniques? No matter what sword technique it was, as long as one was comfortable using it and could help one win in battle, that was the strongest sword technique. This was the foundation of the Mo clan. Mo Fong had used 100 years to successfully comprehend the realm that countless sword cultivators wanted to reach. At this moment, in the ring, a shadow suddenly appeared behind Mo Fong, who was fighting fiercely with Xiao Chun. It was the shadow of a treasured sword. The appearance of the shadow caused Mo Feng's attack to increase by a lot. Seeing the appearance of the shadow, everyone present was stunned at first. Then, one by one, they said in disbelief, "Sword spirit." No one would have thought that Mo Fong had actually comprehended a sword spirit. How is this possible? One had to know that even an emperor would find it difficult to comprehend a sword spirit. What was a spirit? It was a power that could only be obtained after truly comprehending the great path and controlling it. Only by jumping out of the inheritance of the sword path of countless ancestors and finding one's own path would one have the chance to give birth to a sword spirit. It was too difficult to comprehend a sword spirit, but Mo Fong had done it. With a sword spirit, Mo Feng's strength would at least double. I've been feeling strange just now. Mo Feng's sword technique is without any pattern. It's as if he's just randomly slashing. So that's how it is. It said that after comprehending a spirit, one would jump out of the so-called restrictions of martial arts. With a raise of one's hand, one would be able to form their own martial arts and sword technique. They would be extremely powerful. This is the first time I've seen a martial artist who has comprehended a sword spirit. Mo Feng's strength is probably invincible among kings. This is a bit troublesome. After comprehending spirit power, no one below the Emperor realm would be a match for Mo Fong. For a moment, everyone in the Fire Phoenix galaxy was a little worried. This was the last battle. If Xiao Chun could not win, then everyone in the Fire Phoenix galaxy could only stay in the body of the space-killing beast forever. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 3257. Facing Mo Fong, who had comprehended the power of sword spirit. Xiao Chun was clearly suppressed. Seeing such a situation, the people of the Fire Phoenix galaxy were naturally very worried because this was a battle they could not afford to lose. Whether it was the Fire Phoenix galaxy or the Azure Dragon galaxy, they could not afford to lose. Whoever lost would die. Everyone's lives were entrusted to Xiao Chun and Mo Fong. Is there still a chance? The power of sword spirit is too strong. It's probably going to be very difficult. Some people of the Fire Phoenix galaxy were already in despair because they did not know how Xiao Chun could win. With the power of sword spirit, Mo Fong was in an invincible position. Looking at the way the two of them were fighting, it was not hard to tell that Xiao Chun's every attack was easily blocked by Mo Fong. As for Mo Feng's attacks, Xiao Chun had a hard time blocking them. The most terrifying thing about sword spirit was not only that it could jump out of the so-called swordsmanship and make its attacks natural. The real reason why sword spirit was so terrifying was that once one comprehended the power of sword spirit, it was equivalent to having a kind of instinct in battle. There was no need to think at all. The body would naturally react. In this way, it was completely like cheating. No matter how the opponent attacked, it would be easily blocked. While the Fire Phoenix galaxy was in despair, the Azure Dragon galaxy was naturally excited. After all, In the current situation, the Azure Dragon Galaxy was bound to win. The power of Sword Spirit was an unsolvable existence. There were no flaws at all. There is only one way to defeat the power of Sword Spirit, and that was to crush it with strength. That's right, apart from crushing it with strength, there were almost no other methods. This was why everyone was so optimistic about Emophone. The advantage was firmly grasped by Emophone. There was no need to think at all. Emophone was completely relying on his instincts to fight. Not only was the speed of his sword extraordinarily fast, but the angle of his attack was also difficult for Xiao Chun to guard against. If this continued, Xiao Chun's defeat was only a matter of time. One needed to use the brain to think, and the other completely relied on the body. It was naturally clear who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. However, even though he had obtained an absolute advantage, Emophone did not feel the slightest bit of joy. He did not even dare to be careless in the slightest. For some reason, Wind Void was certain that Xiao Chun still had some tricks up his sleeve. Based on his conjecture about Xiao Chun, it was impossible for Xiao Chun to be so weak. It was absolutely impossible. Furthermore, even though he had ruthlessly suppressed Xiao Chun, Emophone did not see the slightest trace of panic on Xiao Chun's face. It was as if everything was under his control. This was very strange, because Emophone couldn't think of any way that Xiao Chun could turn the situation around. Unless he was the same as himself, Xiao Chun seemed to have seen through Emophone's thoughts and said softly, "Don't worry, Brother Mo, it's still a bit difficult to resist the power of the Sword Spirit in this state." Originally, he wanted to see if he could block Emophone, who had activated her Sword Spirit mode under normal circumstances. However, looking at the current situation, it was undoubtedly a failure. Regardless of whether it was attacking or defending, Emophone seemed to be one step ahead of him, always taking the initiative. This way, Xiao Chun was in a very passive position. Furthermore, as time passed, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. With the answer in Xiao Chun's words, in the next second, not only Wind Void, but everyone below the stage was dumbfounded, as if they had seen a ghost. How is this possible? Just as Xiao Chun finished speaking, a shadow appeared behind him, just like Wind Void. It was a shadow of a long sword that was no different from the dustless sword. This was the Sword Spirit. Xiao Chun had actually comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit. Both of them had comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit. What kind of monsters were they? For a moment, everyone was in disbelief. Both Wind Void and Xiao Chun had actually grasped the power of the Sword Spirit, which was extremely difficult to comprehend. How is this possible? However, after being shocked, everyone in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy was overjoyed. Xiao Chun had comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit. This proved that the outcome of this battle was not certain. Spirit energy? As expected, only Lin Yun had a calm expression from the beginning. He didn't seem to be surprised that Xiao Chun had comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit. The reason was very simple. It was because Lin Yun had also comprehended the power of the Spear Spirit. Since he could comprehend the power of the Sword Spirit, then Xiao Chun naturally wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, from the beginning, Lin Yun didn't panic too much. He knew that it was impossible for Wind Void to defeat Xiao Chun with just this. Seeing that Xiao Chun had also entered the Sword Spirit state, Wind Void helplessly revealed a bitter smile. He had guessed correctly. If it were any other time, perhaps Wind Void would be happy if his prediction was so accurate. But now, Wind Void couldn't feel happy at all. If Xiao Chun hadn't comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit, then the outcome of this battle would have been decided. Unfortunately, this fellow had also comprehended the power of the Sword Spirit. All right, let's officially begin now. After entering the Sword Spirit state, Xiao Chun's attack pattern had undergone a tremendous change compared to before. His attacks were without any pattern, but every single one of them possessed absolutely terrifying power. To put it bluntly, the power of the Sword Spirit was a kind of state, or a kind of concept. As long as one entered this state, one's combat strength would increase exponentially. Just like Xiao Chun and Wind Void, both of them had entered the Sword Spirit state, so their attacks became faster and faster. Instinct against instinct. Countless sword images whistled through the air above the stage. The swords in their hands didn't stop for even a second. If it was anyone else in such a battle, even if they were combat ancestor realm kings, they probably wouldn't be able to withstand more than a few moves. That was because there was no time to think at all, and there was no time for him to think. Everything was done based on instinct. Once one's instincts couldn't keep up, then one could only lose. So powerful. Is this the power of the sword spirit? It doesn't even give one the slightest chance to breathe. Any slight mistake can be grasped by the opponent. But after entering the sword spirit state, it's impossible for them to make any mistakes. The sword spirit state represents perfection. No wonder people say that the sword spirit state is the symbol of invincibility in the same realm. The difference is too big. Everyone could see that after entering the sword spirit state and before, Xiao Chun and Wind Void were completely different. They simply didn't seem like the same person. Not only was the power of each sword terrifying, but also didn't seem to consume any energy. Moreover, the grasp of various opportunities had reached an unimaginable level. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 3258. Seeing the two of them enter the sword spirit state at the same time, the crowd below the stage was shocked speechless. This was definitely the most exciting battle. Moreover, whether it was Mo Feng or Xiao Chun, the strength they displayed was definitely superior to the people before them. Chunjian, the Array Elder, Wu Qin, Zhao Lin, none of them could be compared to the two of them. If it was anyone else, this battle would have ended long ago. After all, spiritual energy was not something that anyone could resist. The battle on the stage continued. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days had passed. Xiao Chun and Mo Feng were still fighting fiercely. Moreover, the two of them did not seem to have consumed much of their spiritual energy. It's fake, right? It's already been 3 days. Why is their spiritual energy still so terrifying? Someone said in disbelief. It should be known that even battle ancestor realm kings would consume their spiritual energy very quickly in such an intense battle. It was impossible for them to do what Xiao Chun and Mo Feng were doing. In response, another person on the side explained, "This is spiritual energy. It uses the least amount of spiritual energy to unleash the most terrifying attack." What do you mean? In layman's terms, for the same attack, you might need to use 100% of your spiritual energy. However, if you've mastered spiritual energy, you only need to use 10%. It's that terrifying? It's a little too heaven-defying. Not only can it increase one's battle strength, it can also prevent consumption. Is spiritual energy really that terrifying? Aside from Lin Yun, no one else had comprehended spiritual energy. Naturally, they did not know how terrifying it was. Only Lin Yun remained calm. With Xiao Chun and Mo Feng's strength, it was not strange for them to be able to reach this stage. On the contrary, it was very normal. However, after 3 days and 3 nights of intense battle, the outcome should be decided soon. Xiao Chun and Mo Feng also had the same thought in their minds. After such a long and fierce battle, it was indeed time for a victor to be decided. Xiao Chen's eyes were still as calm as an ancient well, while Mo Feng was somewhat helpless. At this time, Mo Feng had basically figured out Xiao Chen's depth. However, the more it was so, the more uncomfortable Mo Feng felt. The reason was simple. Wind Void couldn't find a way to defeat Xiao Chun. With Xiao Chen's strength, Mo Feng couldn't find the slightest flaw. There was no way to defeat him. This made Mo Feng feel helpless. However, the outcome of this battle had to be determined. It was impossible for there to be a draw unless the two of them perished together. It was just like Wu Qin and the others. Otherwise, the battle would not have stopped. It's time to decide the victor. Just as Mo Feng was feeling helpless, Xiao Chun said faintly. Hearing this, Mo Feng was stunned. Could it be that this guy was still holding back? Even the state of sword spirit has been revealed. Could it be that Xiao Qian still had a trump card? This sentence caused Mo Feng to be dumbfounded for a moment. In his opinion, Xiao Qian's strength was indeed very strong, but it should be on par with him. Even if Xiao Qian was stronger than him, his strength should be very limited. Since Mo Feng couldn't do anything to Xiao Qian, then Xiao Qian shouldn't be able to do anything to him either. But now, Xiao Qian actually said that it was time to decide the victor. This made Mo Feng somewhat unable to understand. Could it be that Xiao Qian still had the confidence to defeat him? This was something that Mo Feng was absolutely unwilling to believe. Looking at Mo Feng's slightly changed expression, Xiao Qian didn't say much. Although he guessed what Mo Feng was thinking, he didn't have the slightest intention to explain. The facts would prove everything. The sword technique in his hand suddenly changed. After a slash was blocked by Mo Feng, Xiao Qian took the opportunity to raise the dustless sword high above his head and then slash down fiercely. Monarch Sword. As the sword slashed down, a terrifying sword edge instantly streaked across. The space was directly torn apart by the terrifying sword chi. One had to know that this was the interior of the void-slaying beast. The space was completely different from the outside world. Even a battle ancestor realm king couldn't travel through the void here. However, Xiao Qian's slash almost shattered the space. Although he didn't succeed in the end, the cracks that covered the space were enough to shock everyone. After all, in the previous 9 battles, no one was able to do this. All along, the space here was as stable as a rock. Even Mo Feng's eyes began to twitch crazily when he saw this scene. He's simply a monster. Facing Xiao Qian's attack, Mo Feng cursed helplessly. That's right, this Xiao Qian was a monster. If he wasn't a monster, who could do this? Mo Feng even suspected that if it wasn't for the huge gap between a battle ancestor realm king and an emperor realm king, as well as the difference in nature, this monster would have been able to do this. Otherwise, this monster would have been able to challenge someone of a higher realm and challenge an emperor realm king. No matter what, Xiao Qian was definitely the strongest opponent that Mo Feng had ever encountered in his life. He was so strong that even he was a little scared. However, after the shock, Mo Feng quickly regained his calm. The power of Xiao Qian's slash was indeed not bad. It was almost comparable to an Emperor Realm King's attack. However, it was still a little whimsical to want to rely on such an attack to determine the winner. Mobilizing his aura to the peak, Mo Feng continuously slashed out more than 10 slashes, fiercely slashing toward the Emperor's sword. For a time, Mo Feng could only be seen on the stage, continuously waving the long sword in his hand, using it to block Xiao Qian's Emperor's sword. Under Mo Feng's frenzied attacks, the Emperor's sword was indeed blocked. Furthermore, after every collision, the might of the Emperor's sword would weaken by a little. In the end, under everyone's eyes, the Emperor's sword was forcibly broken by Mo Feng. It exploded in the air and quickly dissipated. Facing such an outcome, everyone from the Azure Dragon Galaxy clenched their fists tightly, extremely excited. Admittedly, Xiao Qian's slash was indeed very strong. However, in order to unleash such a powerful attack, for Xiao Qian, the burden should have been quite big, right? Therefore, for Mo Feng to be able to block this slash, in the eyes of everyone from the Azure Dragon Galaxy, it was a success. After all, they didn't think that Xiao Qian could use this ultimate move repeatedly. Not only the people from the Azure Dragon Galaxy, but even Mo Feng also thought so. After successfully breaking the Emperor's sword, Mo Feng let out a breath of turbid air and smiled bitterly. What a terrifying slash. I was almost killed. Although he said that, looking at Mo Feng's expression, it was obvious that he was very relaxed. It was obvious that this guy must have thought that this slash was Xiao Qian's trump card, but now it was blocked by him. As for whether Xiao Qian could use this ultimate move again, in Mo Feng's opinion, he should be able to, but he definitely wouldn't be able to use it many times. In this way, Mo Feng was confident that he could successfully block it, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 3259. He's blocked it. Everyone could guess Mo Feng's thoughts. The people from Fire Phoenix Galaxy were naturally disappointed by such an outcome. The power of Xiao Qian's sword was indeed extremely powerful. Earlier, all of them felt their scalps go numb. But who would have thought that Mo Feng would actually block it in the blink of an eye? What do they do now? Everyone had different thoughts. Only Lin Yun remained calm. There was even a faint smile hanging on the corner of her mouth. She acted as if she didn't hear the discussions around her. These people only thought that Mo Feng could win because he blocked Xiao Qian's sure-kill attack. How naive. The Emperor's sword was indeed Xiao Qian's strongest attack. But Mo Feng was wrong about one thing, and that was the consumption of energy. At this moment, Xiao Qian on the stage spoke. He looked calmly at Mo Feng and said, I merely blocked a sword. Is there need to be so happy? Haha, this is your sure-kill attack. Is it not worth being happy about? Hearing those words, Xiao Qian paused for a moment. Then he nodded slightly. You're right. I guess you're thinking that since you've blocked my strongest attack, then I shouldn't be able to do anything to you, right? Xiao Qian bluntly said what Mo Feng was thinking. Mo Feng didn't deny it. Indeed, the Emperor's sword is indeed my strongest attack. However, although you've blocked it, there's nothing to be happy about. Because, speaking up to here, Xiao Qian didn't continue. Instead, he used actions to tell Mo Feng. He raised his hand and slashed. It was the Emperor's sword again. Seeing that, Mo Feng tried to block it again. However, before he could successfully break the first Emperor's sword, Xiao Qian attacked again. It was the Emperor's sword again. Mo Feng was completely dumbfounded by the fact that Xiao Qian had used the Emperor's sword twice in a row. This was completely different from what he had expected. How could Xiao Qian use such a terrifying killer move so easily? Shouldn't it consume a lot of energy? Shouldn't it be a trump card? Why was it like this? Wind Void's confidence came from the fact that Xiao Qian couldn't use the Emperor's sword without a limit. But now, seeing Xiao Qian easily use the Emperor's sword twice in a row, Wind Void started to panic. However, he didn't have much time to think because the two Emperor's swords were coming straight at him. In response to this, Mo Feng could only use all his strength and continuously slash out attacks. In the end, he was barely able to block Xiao Qian's two Emperor's swords. Such a scene also shocked everyone present. Was the Emperor's sword Xiao Qian's killer move? If it wasn't, why would it possess such terrifying power? Moreover, Xiao Qian had just admitted that the Emperor's sword was his strongest attack. But if that was the case, why was he able to use it so easily? Could it be that he didn't consume too much energy? Countless questions intertwined in everyone's mind, but at this time, Xiao Qian directly gave the answer. The Emperor's sword does consume a lot of energy. If I'm not in the sword spirit state, I can only use it about 5 times. And if I'm in the sword spirit state, although I haven't tried it specifically, 50 times shouldn't be a problem. Damn, hearing Xiao Qian's words, Wind Void couldn't help but explode. Seeing how easily Xiao Qian said it, Wind Void wanted to curse. Was this a F*** trump card? An attack that could be casually used dozens of times was a trump card? Moreover, Xiao Qian didn't even need to prepare to use such an attack. Looking at it, it could be said that he could use it casually. This was even more F** unacceptable. Was this a casual attack or an ultimate move? So, you can block my Emperor's sword. There's nothing to be happy about, unless you can block my next attack. Get ready. He even asked Wind Void to get ready. If it were any other time, even Wind Void would probably curse. But now, he couldn't care less about this. Xiao Qian's combat power was far beyond his imagination. At this moment, the only thing Wind Void thought about was how to block Xiao Qian's attack. Otherwise, he would definitely die here. With a serious expression, he stared at Xiao Qian. Under Wind Void's gaze, Xiao Qian once again raised the dustless sword in his hand. This time, he held the sword with both hands instead of one hand. It's coming. With a light shout, the dustless sword slashed down. The first Emperor's sword was used, but Xiao Qian didn't stop. Soon, he raised the dustless sword again and slashed down for the second time. 2 slashes 3 slashes for slashes. In an instant, more than 10 Emperor swords whizzed towards Wind Void like a flood. What Xiao Chan said was actually true. He could indeed use the Emperor's sword dozens of times. Moreover, there was almost no time between them. Even the audience below was dumbfounded. This was the first time they had seen someone use their trump card like this. No one would doubt it if he said it was a casual attack. I can't block it. On the side of the Azure Dragon Galaxy, the Elder of Arrays stared blankly at the battle in the arena and said with some despair. He also didn't expect Xiao Chen's strength to be like this. Before this, the Elder of Arrays, who was no stranger to Wind Void, knew that with Wind Void's strength, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to block Xiao Chen's attack. It wasn't that Wind Void was too weak, but that Xiao Chen's strength was too strong. It was a little too strong, a little too ridiculous. In almost an instant, Wind Void's resistance was swallowed up by the Emperor's sword. Wind Void's entire body was also drowned by the Emperor's sword. A total of 20 Emperor swords were slashed out. At this time, these 20 Emperor swords had completely swallowed Wind Void. Under the Emperor sword's shroud, both Wind Void's body and spirit suffered a terrifying attack. Even someone as strong as Wind Void couldn't block such an attack. It was difficult for him to hold on. He could clearly feel that his body was showing signs of collapse, and his spirit was constantly being torn apart. Am I going to die? At this time, Wind Void finally realized a fact, and that was that he was probably going to die this time. Who would have thought that such a freak was hidden in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, and that he had become his opponent? Could someone at the same level really defeat such a person? Putting everything else aside, Wind Void believed that even if an emperor were to come, they wouldn't dare to underestimate Xiao Chen's final series of attacks. I really don't know how strong this guy will be when he breaks through to the Emperor realm. If he was already so strong now, what would happen when Xiao Chan broke through to the Emperor realm? Perhaps even among the emperors, it would be very difficult for anyone to contend against him. Begging for collection, begging for votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3260. Mo Feng's body was completely enveloped by the Emperor's sword, so no one could see his current situation. However, it wasn't difficult for the crowd to guess that Mo Feng was in danger in the face of such a terrifying attack. It was almost impossible for him to survive such an attack. It's over. We're all going to die here. No, I don't believe that we can't defeat the void-slaying beast with so many of us. That's right. Even if we can't defeat it, we can't just give up like this. Mo Feng's death meant that the Azure Dragon Galaxy side was completely defeated. According to the rules of the void-slaying beast, all of them had to stay here. At the thought of dying here, the Azure Dragon Galaxy's people were naturally unwilling and decided to give it their all. Compared to them, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's people were much more relaxed. From the current situation, there was basically no problem with this battle. Xiao Chen's victory was already inevitable, and Mo Feng probably wouldn't be able to survive this attack. Not only would the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's people be safe, but they would also be rewarded by the Void-Slaying Beast. Although the Void-Slaying Beast was very mysterious, from the people who had entered the Void-Slaying Beast and returned alive, the reward was very generous. The Azure Dragon Galaxy's people were in despair, but the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's people were overjoyed and even looked forward to the next reward. Under everyone's gaze, the terrifying sword on the stage slowly dissipated. The surrounding space also quickly healed. When everything returned to normal, the crowd discovered that Mo Feng's figure had already disappeared. Xiao Chan must have obliterated him, and not even his body was left behind. Seeing Mo Feng's death, the Fire Phoenix Galaxy's people couldn't help but clap and cheer. They finally won. The people who had been on tenterhooks could finally breathe a sigh of relief. They didn't have to worry about being killed by the void-slaying beast. Xiao Chun, who had won, still looked incomparably calm, as if he didn't feel the slightest joy from killing Mo Feng. He sheathed his sword, turned around, and slowly walked down the stage. He came to Lin Yun's side and looked at Xiao Chun, who had just experienced a great battle. Lin Yun smiled. Congratulations. He's a decent opponent, but unfortunately, he's still a little too weak. Xiao Chan indifferently replied. He approved of Mo Feng's strength. At least, Mo Feng was definitely not weak. While the two of them were talking, a sudden change occurred in the Azure Dragon Galaxy. Pillars of light descended from the sky, instantly enveloping everyone. Everyone knew that it was the doing of the sky-slaying beast. Now that the battle was over, it was time to fulfill the promise. The Azure Dragon Galaxy had been defeated, so all of them had to die. Enveloped by the pillars of light, the people from the Azure Dragon Galaxy began to attack one after another. They would not allow themselves to be captured without putting up a fight. Even in the face of a void-slaying beast, the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy would fight with all their might instead of waiting for death. Unfortunately, when the attacks of the Azure Dragon Galaxies people hit the light pillar, they had no effect at all. Not even the slightest ripple appeared. It was as if these light pillars were completely immune to everyone's attacks. The people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy grew more and more desperate. Was this the strength of the void-slaying beast? It was no wonder that even the sovereigns were afraid of the void-slaying beast. There was no use resisting at all. It seemed that the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy only had one choice, which was to wait for death. Yes, there was no way to resist at all. In the face of the overwhelming strength of the void-slaying beast, the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy could only resign themselves to fate and wait for death. Under the gaze of the people of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy, some terrifying power seemed to have erupted from the pillars of light. One by one, the martialists of the Azure Dragon Galaxy began to be obliterated. Their physical bodies seemed to be intact, but their spirits were constantly being obliterated. Once the spirit disappeared, it would be useless even if the physical body was left behind. It would still be equivalent to death. Seeing the deaths of the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy, Xiao Chen seemed to know where the puppets he had encountered before had come from. Previously, he had found it strange. Those puppets did not seem to have been refined at all. So how did they become puppets? Now, it seemed that their spirits had been obliterated and were controlled by the void-slaying beast. After the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy lost their spirits, their physical bodies could only become puppets in the hands of the void-slaying beast from now on. They had no chance of resisting at all. Everything happened too quickly. From the beginning to the end, it only took more than 100 breaths. After the spirits of the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy were obliterated, the pillars of light disappeared with their physical bodies as if they had never appeared. Although Xiao Chun and the others were not happy about the deaths of the people of the Azure Dragon Galaxy, they were not sad at all. After all, they were not companions. Moreover, in the future, the Azure Dragon Galaxy would very likely be a great enemy of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Sooner or later, a great war would break out between the two sides. Therefore, their deaths were still good news for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. It's over. Yes, it's over. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun spoke one after another. At the same time, another pillar of light descended from the sky and enveloped Xiao Chun and the others. Of course, this time, the pillar of light was not to kill Xiao Chun and the others. Instead, it was to reward them. After winning the final victory, Xiao Chun and the others were qualified to receive the reward of the void-slaying beast. As the pillar of light enveloped them, Xiao Chun seemed to have something extra in his mind that did not belong to him at all. At first, he did not have much of a reaction. However, as these memories continued to increase, even Xiao Chun was shocked. The method to comprehend the origin energy. He did not expect the reward given by the void-slaying beast to be so precious. It was actually the method to comprehend the origin energy. In addition, Xiao Chen also obtained a trace of the origin energy seed. With this seed, it would be easier for Xiao Chun to comprehend the origin energy in the future. If there were no accidents, Xiao Chun would have a 99% chance of successfully comprehending the origin energy. Lin Yun's reward was the same as Xiao Chen's, but it was different for the others. In other words, those who participated in the battle received the same reward, but those who didn't participate in the battle received much less. There was only the method to comprehend the origin energy, but there was no seed of the origin energy. Compared to the method of comprehending origin energy, the seed of origin energy was undoubtedly more precious. Moreover, it wasn't just a little bit. However, no one knew what they had obtained. Everyone's face was filled with shock and ecstasy. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 32:61. After a whole day and night, the light pillars slowly disappeared, and Xiao Chun and the rest had improved tremendously. Although there was no obvious improvement in their cultivation, the reward this time made everyone wild with joy. After all, the method to comprehend the origin energy was something they had to master to break through to become an emperor. Everyone present was a king of the war ancestor realm. To put it bluntly, everyone wanted to break through to become an emperor one day. Now that they had received the reward, they seemed to see a glimmer of hope. Although it was just a little more chance, it did not guarantee success. In fact, there might only be a few people who could break through to become an emperor in the end. However, it was enough to make everyone excited. As the light pillar disappeared, a space passage appeared at the side. It was a space passage that led to the outside world. As the winner, Xiao Chun and the rest could now leave the inside of the void-slaying beast. Just as the matter inside the void-slaying beast was over, on the other side of the Emperor Dong's palace, Old Man Dong Wang, Zi Xian, and Lai Wan sat together. I wonder how Xiao Chun and the rest are doing. Yeah, Xiao Chun and the rest entered the void-slaying beast. There's no news yet. Of course, they knew about the appearance of the void-slaying beast in the Scattered Star Sea. Old Man Dong Wang even contacted the Fire Phoenix Star-Lord about it. Unfortunately, the Fire Phoenix Star-Lord did not intend to forcefully attack the void-slaying beast, so everything depended on Xiao Chun and the rest. There's nothing we can do now. Although the void-slaying beast is dangerous, it's an opportunity for Xiao Chun and the rest, Old Man Dong Wang said faintly. Dong Wang said faintly. Even though he was an emperor, he did not have a good way to deal with the void-slaying beast. The only thing worth mentioning was that the void-slaying beast had its own set of rules for some reason. Those who had entered the void-slaying beast and returned safely knew that as long as they were on the winning side, they could leave safely. There had never been an exception to this. Now, they could only hope that Xiao Chun and the rest could succeed in winning inside the void-slaying beast. Just as Old Man Dong Wang, Zi Xian, Lai Wan, and the rest were worried, Xiao Chun and the rest gradually appeared on Constellation Island in the Disarray Star Sea. Through the space tunnel, Xiao Chun and the others had safely left the body of the void-slaying beast and returned to the Scattered Star Sea. As Xiao Chun and the others left, the void-slaying beast also disappeared. The original entrance disappeared completely. No one knew how the void-slaying beast appeared or what it looked like. As Xiao Chun and the others appeared, the two rulers who had rushed over from the Central Territory appeared in front of everyone. Looking at the people in front of them, the two rulers naturally guessed that the Fire Phoenix Galaxy had won the battle inside the space-killing beast body. Both of them revealed a look of satisfaction in their eyes, but one of them still asked, "Which galaxy did you meet?" "Azure Dragon Galaxy." In response, Xiao Chun replied. He could tell at a glance that the two of them were rulers. Hearing Xiao Chun's answer, the two rulers were slightly stunned. Currently, the relationship between the Fire Phoenix Galaxy and the Azure Dragon Galaxy was deteriorating. Both sides were already preparing for a possible war. At this moment, inside the space-killing beast, Xiao Chun and the others had actually met the people from the Azure Dragon Galaxy and had even won. It had to be said that this was indeed good news, at least for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. No matter in which aspect, as long as they could suppress the Azure Dragon Galaxy, it would be good news for the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Not bad, not bad. Looking at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun with satisfaction, the two rulers nodded and praised. With their eyesight, it was not difficult for them to see that among the crowd, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were the strongest. In that case, in the previous battle, the two of them must have also been the decisive factor in the victory. Without saying anything more, the space-killing beast disappeared, and this matter came to an end. The two rulers asked a few simple questions and then prepared to leave. It was an eventful time, and the two of them could not stay in the scattered star sea for too long. There were still many things that they needed to deal with in the central region. However, before leaving, the two of them smiled at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. You should be Xiao Chun and Lin Yun from Emperor Dong's palace, right? Old Dong Wang personally came to find us. Now that everything is fine, I guess that old man is relieved. If you go to the central region in the future, you can come and find me. He directly pointed out their identities. Hearing this, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun both nodded in response. After the two rulers left, the kings of the scattered star sea also dispersed one after another. However, before each of them left, they all extended an invitation to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Everyone had witnessed their strengths. In their eyes, as long as Xiao Chun and Lin Yun did not die, they would definitely break through to the ruler realm. Therefore, it would only be beneficial to establish a good relationship with Xiao Chun and Yi Zichen at this time. In this regard, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun only nodded with a smile and did not give any promises. After everyone left, only Xiao Chun, Lin Yun, and the Qing Yun sex ancestor were left. The Qing Yun sex ancestor was considered lucky. He did not make a move from the beginning to the end, but in the end, he got a bargain for nothing. Shall we go back? Looking at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, the Qing Yun sex ancestor asked respectfully. Let's go. Now that the matter here was over, it was time to return to the Qing Yun sect. He did not know if Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others had come out of closed-door cultivation. Just as he was about to leave, a spatial spirit boat slowly came over. It was the spatial spirit boat that Xiao Chun and the others had taken before. Needless to say, the person driving was naturally Feng Ling. This woman actually did not leave and had been waiting here. Looking at the slender and elegant Feng Ling on the deck, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun looked at each other and revealed a faint smile. It was definitely not a coincidence that this woman appeared here, and it was even more impossible that she had good intentions. He had a favor to ask of her, but he still did not know what this woman was after. Compared to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, the Qing Yun sex ancestor was frowning slightly. Feng Ling gave him a very dangerous feeling. Moreover, this woman was trying her best to get close to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. What was her goal? Was it to unify the entire East Star continent? If that was the case, then the Qing Yun sect would definitely not be spared. As the Qing Yun sect's ancestor, he naturally would not agree to this matter. Senior, it's great that you're fine. Arriving in front of Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, Feng Ling smiled and bowed. From the looks of it, she was really touched and happy that Xiao Chun and the others returned safely. Why didn't you leave? In response, Xiao Chun asked with a smile. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3262. Since the two seniors haven't left yet, I naturally won't leave first. Feng Ming replied respectfully to Xiao Chen's question, looking sincere. However, both Xiao Chun and Lin Yun scoffed at this. The woman had done so much, so she must have some other purpose in mind. However, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun didn't care. In any case, the two of them would leave the scattered star sea sooner or later. What Feng Ming wanted to do had nothing to do with them. The three of them quickly boarded the spatial spirit ship and headed towards the East Star continent. Although the Qing Yun sect's patriarch was unwilling to be with Feng Ming, he had no choice since Xiao Chun and Lin Yun had boarded the ship. Just like before, as soon as they boarded the ship, the Qing Yun sect's patriarch and Lin Yun returned to their rooms to cultivate. Xiao Chun was not interested in paying attention to Feng Ming and also returned to her room. However, not long after, Feng Ming took the initiative to look for her. Senior, what's the matter? Looking at Feng Ming standing at the door, Xiao Chun said indifferently. Perhaps knowing that Xiao Chun and Lin Yun were about to leave the scattered star sea, Feng Ming didn't hesitate this time and mustered up her courage to speak. To be honest, I do have a request. As long as Senior is willing to help, I'm willing to pay any price. To be honest, Feng Ming was indeed very tempting, but to Xiao Chun, beauty was no longer of any use to her. Therefore, it was impossible for Feng Ming to use her to move Xiao Chun. Moreover, even if Feng Ming didn't say anything, Xiao Chun could roughly guess it. Therefore, without waiting for Feng Ming to speak, Xiao Chun spoke directly. To the scattered star sea, we are just passers-by. It doesn't matter to me who dominates the scattered star sea. Therefore, you don't have to waste time on me. What you do, how you do it, and what methods you use have nothing to do with me, and I don't want to be involved. You are a smart person. You should know what I mean. Xiao Chun intended to completely cut off Feng Ming's thoughts. Feng Ming was dreaming if he wanted to use them to rule the East Star Continent or the Disarray Star Sea. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Feng Ming fell into silence. Perhaps she had already guessed that this would be the outcome. After all, with Xiao Chun and Lin Yun's current status, how could they still be used by others? Beauty and treasures were almost useless to Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. He stared at Xiao Chun without blinking. Seeing this, Xiao Chun directly ordered him to leave. If there's nothing else, you may leave. There's no need to continue wasting time on me. Xiao Chun knew that Feng Ming would definitely be able to understand what he was trying to say. However, what Xiao Chun did not expect was that after hearing this, not only did Feng Ming not leave, he even knelt in front of him. Seeing how persistent and unreasonable Feng Ming was, Xiao Chun's face darkened. This Feng Ming was a little ungrateful. Xiao Chun was displeased, and there was a faint pressure around him. Under the shroud of Xiao Chun's pressure, Feng Ming's face became extremely ugly, but he still stubbornly gritted his teeth and persisted. Senior, I don't want to rule the East Star Continent or the Disarray Star Sea. I just want to take revenge and obtain power. Feng Ming had been taken in as a disciple by the Dragon Phoenix Valley's ancestor since he was young. He and Long Lai were fellow disciples. However, before this, even Long Lai and his son did not know where Feng Ming came from. In other words, Feng Ming had concealed her origin. She was not from the Disarray Star Sea, but the Feng people from the Central Region. The Feng people were a large clan in the Central Region. They were the descendants of the ancient Divine Phoenix. The Feng people had always been a large clan in the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. Although the Feng people had their ups and downs in the long river of history, they had never declined from the beginning to the end. Firstly, it was because of the Feng people's foundation. Secondly, it was because of the Feng people's bloodline. Even now, there were still two rulers among the Feng people. There were actually two rulers in one clan. This kind of strength was even more powerful than the Emperor Dong's palace. As a direct descendant of the Feng people, Feng Ming hated his own clan to the bone. The reason was very simple. Feng Ming's bloodline had been extracted by someone. As a God-favored child when he was born, when Feng Ming was born back then, it could be said to have caused a sensation among the Feng people. Even the great ancestor personally said that Feng Ming's talent was definitely that of a ruler. Unfortunately, his top-notch talent also attracted the covetous eyes of others. In particular, Feng Ming's parents had died early, so she had lived with her aunt since she was young. However, her aunt was the person who had personally pushed her into the abyss. For the sake of her son, Feng Ming's aunt took action to extract Feng Ming's bloodline. This also caused Feng Ming's talent to plummet, and she was still unable to break through to the warlord realm. If it were not for her good luck back then, Feng Ming would not have been able to escape to the Scattered Star Sea and live until now. Therefore, since she was young, Feng Ming had always wanted to obtain strength because she wanted to take revenge for her aunt and brother. One had extracted her bloodline, and the other had inherited her bloodline. Feng Ming swore that she would not let these two people off. Unfortunately, without the power of her bloodline, Feng Ming knew that it would be difficult for her to take revenge on her own. Putting everything else aside, her brother, who had inherited her bloodline power, was already at the peak of the warlord realm. He was extremely powerful and was not someone Feng Ming could contend against. Feng Ming had been trying to rope in Xiao Chun and Lin Yun because she wanted them to become her helpers and help her take revenge in the future. Feng Ming had never told anyone about these things, but now he was telling Xiao Chen about it. Because Feng Ming knew that this was her only chance. If she did not say these things, Feng Ming would no longer have the chance to take revenge. Unfortunately, after listening to Feng Ming's narration, Xiao Chen's face was still calm and did not change at all. Glancing at Feng Ming indifferently, Xiao Chen said, "What does what you said have to do with me?" Indeed, from Feng Ming's words, her experience was indeed very tragic. But so what? Just because of this, she wanted Xiao Chen to provoke the Feng people who were like behemoths? This was obviously impossible. A force that was even larger than the Emperor Dong's palace. If it was not for the fact that there was no other choice, who would want to go against it? Not to mention helping an unrelated person. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Feng Ming immediately spoke. "Senior, as long as you are willing to help, I am willing to pay any price, even if I have to be a servant, be a slave or a maid." Hearing this, Xiao Chen waved her hand and said, "No need, I can't help you with this. You don't have to say anything more to me. Let's go." Feng Ming's matter was very difficult to handle, and Xiao Chen did not want to be involved. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, a look of disappointment flashed across Feng Ming's eyes. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3263. Feng Ming's experience was very tragic. As a direct descendant of the Feng people, she was harmed and her bloodline was taken away because of her talent. She had even been hunted down since she was young. Even so, Xiao Chen had no intention of making a move because Xiao Chen really did not want to provoke the Feng people. It was impossible for him to provoke an entity that was even more powerful than Emperor Dong's palace for such a reason. Xiao Chen was not a saint. There were too many unfair things in this world. Who could control them all? Not to mention Xiao Chen, even old man Dong Wang would not be able to handle the matter that involved the Feng people. This was because the Feng people had the right to not give old man Dong Wang face. He forcefully chased Feng Ming away, shook his head, and stopped thinking about these things. After leaving Xiao Chen's place, Feng Ming did not go to Lin Yun's place again. She also knew that Xiao Chen's attitude actually represented Lin Yun's attitude. Feng Ming could understand Xiao Chen's choice. However, if even Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were not willing to help her, Feng Ming really did not know who else could help her take revenge. The Dragon Phoenix Valley? Although the Dragon Phoenix Valley was now firmly in Feng Ming's hands, the Dragon Phoenix Valley was just an ant in front of the Feng people. They did not take it seriously at all. As for Feng Ming's own cultivation, to put it bluntly, after her bloodline was extracted, even if she used all her methods, Feng Ming would at most break through to the combat ancestor realm. This was achieved by using many extreme methods. For example, imprisoning Long Mo and using the spiritual power in Long Mo's body to help her break through. However, so what if she broke through to the combat ancestor realm? A combat ancestor realm king might be very strong in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of the Feng people, she was nothing. There were at least 10 combat ancestor realm kings among the Feng people. Without becoming a ruler, Feng Ming did not even have the qualifications to confront the Feng people head-on. Originally, Feng Ming felt that Xiao Chen and Lin Yun had the temperament of an emperor, so she wanted to rope them in. Otherwise, why didn't she rope in the Qing Yun's sect's old ancestor? Without the bearing of an emperor, it was impossible for one to look like a phoenix. According to the previous plan, if Xiao Chen and Lin Yun were willing to help him, then when they broke through to become rulers, they might be able to help him. But now it was obviously impossible. Xiao Chen was not willing to get involved in this mess. After a few days, the spatial spirit boat entered the East Star continent and flew directly towards the Blue Cloud sect. For a few days, Xiao Chen and Lin Yun didn't show up. It was only when the spatial spirit boat arrived at the Qing Yun sect that Xiao Chen and Lin Yun came out of their room. However, the two of them did not have the intention to pay attention to Feng Ming. They took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. Looking in the direction where Xiao Chen and Lin Yun left, Feng Ming gritted her teeth. Her heart was filled with unwillingness, but there was nothing she could do. She naturally did not dare to force Xiao, Chun, and Lin Yun's sect. Otherwise, with Xiao Chen's character, he would probably kill her directly. She was extremely dejected as she drove the spatial spirit boat away. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun turned a deaf ear to this. When the two of them returned to their residence, they learned from Wang Xian, the sect master of the Qing Yun sect, that Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others had already come out of closed-door cultivation. Moreover, their cultivations had all broken through to the divine ancestor realm. Long Qing and the others had come out of closed-door cultivation. This was naturally good news. Moreover, after breaking through, everyone's strength was clearly incomparable. After all, the gap between ancient creatures and the divine ancestor realm could be imagined. At the residence, they saw Long Qing and the others who had already come out of closed-door cultivation. When she saw Xiao Chun, Long Qing took the initiative to welcome him and said somewhat reproachfully, "Little brother, you're still so reckless. You really worry me to death." Long Qing was obviously talking about the matter of the void-slaying beast. Such a big matter had naturally spread long ago. It was not strange that the Qing Yun sect knew about it. Knowing that Long Qing was worried about him, Xiao Chen also replied with a smile, "Aren't I fine? Second sister, you don't have to worry. You still have the cheek to say that. You have to know that a person can't always be so lucky. If you encounter such a thing in the future, you must be more careful." Yes, I know. In fact, the matter of the void-slaying beast could not be blamed entirely on Xiao Chun. After all, who would have thought that a place that was suspected to be the tomb of an emperor would actually be the void-slaying beast? The current Xiao Chun was indeed different from when he was young. He had lost a lot of the hot-bloodedness of his youth and had become more cautious and careful. It cannot be helped. Once a person had more considerations, they naturally could not be unscrupulous. For example, if Feng Ming's matter had happened when he was young, Xiao Chun might have considered helping. However, Xiao Chun refused without hesitation at all now. Firstly, it was because there were too many ties around him, such as his family, parents, wife, and children. For the sake of their safety, Xiao Chun naturally could not be so impulsive anymore. Secondly, he had seen too many things, so some things did not affect him as much. After comforting Long Qing, Lin Yun also started chatting with Lin Yuan, the monk, the Taoist priest, and the others. Then, everyone sat together and discussed the matter of going to the central region. Speaking of which, they had gained a lot in the scattered star sea this time. Whether it was Long Qing, Lin Yuan, Xiao Chun, or Lin Yun, they had all gained something. Now that Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others had come out of seclusion, it was time to leave. After all, the central region was their real destination. They could not stay in the scattered star sea forever. They decided to set off early the next morning. After a night of silence, the next morning, they learned that Xiao Chun and the others were preparing to leave. Wang Xian and the Qing Yun sect's ancestor sent them off at the same time. Facing people like Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, who could break through to the emperor stage at any time, the Qing Yun sect's ancestor obviously wanted to befriend them. It was fine now, because everyone was a king of the war ancestor realm. However, once Xiao Chun and Lin Yun broke through to the emperor stage, it would be completely different. Therefore, it was naturally a good thing for the Qing Yun sect's ancestor to take advantage of this opportunity to build a good relationship with Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun knew very well what the Qing Yun sect's ancestor was thinking, but they did not care. After all, it was hard to say if they would be able to meet again in the future. There was no need to take these things to heart. Everyone, this is a small token of my appreciation. When he was sending them off, the Qing Yun sect's ancestor took out an interspatial ring and gave it to Xiao Chun. There were many medicinal pills, fine wine, spirit stones, and so on inside. Although these things were nothing to Xiao Chun and the others, they still had to express their sincerity. Xiao Chun smiled and did not refuse. He accepted the interspatial ring and cupped his hands to the Qing Yun sect's ancestor with a smile. Then let's part ways here. Without saying anything else, Xiao Chun and the others boarded the spatial spirit boat and left without the slightest bit of reluctance. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 3264. Xiao Chun and the others left without the slightest reluctance. To them, there was indeed nothing worthy of nostalgia in the Scattered Star Sea. Although the Scattered Star Sea was indeed a little special compared to the other 5 regions, Xiao Chun and the others were just passers-by. After Xiao Chun and the others left, Feng Ming, who was in the Dragon Phoenix Valley, received the news immediately. However, this time, Feng Ming did not take any action. Ever since she had talked to Xiao Chun on the spatial spirit ship, Feng Ming understood that it was impossible for Xiao Chun to take action for her. Since Xiao Chun was unwilling to take action, Feng Ming could only rely on herself. She also understood that it was almost impossible to take revenge with her own strength. It could even be said to be a fool's dream. However, even after a few times, Feng Ming still could not forget the hatred in her heart. She had to take revenge. After so many years, she had always insisted on taking revenge. If she let go of her hatred, Feng Ming really did not know how she could live. If she wanted to take revenge first, she could only start with the Dragon Phoenix Valley. Long Mo and his son were useless now. She could only wait for her to refine all the spiritual energy in Long Mo's body. After her cultivation broke through to the War Ancestor realm, Feng Ming could directly execute the father and son and truly control the Dragon Phoenix Valley. A small Dragon Phoenix Valley was nothing to Feng Ming. Moreover, after so many years of preparation, the entire Dragon Phoenix Valley had long become her confidence. Right now, Feng Ming only needed to say a word and Long Mo and his son would lose control of the Dragon Phoenix Valley. She would also become the true master of the Dragon Phoenix Valley. However, now was obviously not the time. Everything had to wait until she broke through to the War Ancestor realm. In Feng Ming's plan, the Dragon Phoenix Valley was the first step of her revenge and the most important power in her hands. Although the Dragon Phoenix Valley was like the difference between the stars and the bright moon when compared to the Feng people, there was no other way. Feng Ming had worked hard enough, and it was not easy to reach this step. Everything could only be done slowly. At least with the Dragon Phoenix Valley, she had not gained nothing after so many years. He did not know what Feng Ming was thinking, nor did he realize how crazy Feng Ming would be after they left the East Star Continent. Moreover, under Feng Ming's madness, she had unified the entire East Star Continent in just a few years. The Azure Cloud sect and other large sects were destroyed by Feng Ming one after another. Xiao Chun and the others didn't know anything about this, nor did they care about it. What did the East Star Continent have to do with them? Even if the East Star Continent was destroyed tomorrow, Xiao Chun and the others wouldn't care too much. The distance from the Disarray Star Sea to the Central Region was not too far. If one rode the spatial spirit boat and traveled at full speed, it would not take long to reach the Central Region. However, Xiao Chun and the others didn't care too much about the time. They headed towards the Central Region at a leisurely pace. Along the way, they passed by some continents. Since they had nothing to do, Xiao Chun's group would stop for a few days to enjoy the local wine and stroll around. Just like that, it took several months for Xiao Chun's group to finally enter the Central Region. As the center of the entire Fire Phoenix galaxy, the Central Region had the most powerhouses. Moreover, when one entered the Central Region, they had to undergo inspection. This was to prevent people from other galaxies from sneaking into the Central Region. Finally, the entire Central Region was covered by a huge formation set up by the Star-Lord. This was a defensive formation and also a detection formation. Once someone tried to barge into the Central Region, the powerhouses of the Star-Lord's palace would know immediately. There were a total of 4 entrances to enter the Central Region: north, south, east, and west. Xiao Chun and the others entered from the east entrance. With the identity of the Emperor Dong's palace's ruler, Xiao Chun and the others naturally entered the Central Region without any obstructions. After all, the Emperor Dong's palace was equivalent to an external force of the Star-Lord's palace. It was an official existence. Naturally, No one would stop Xiao Chun and the others. Phew, the spirit qi in the central region is much denser, and this is only the periphery. Yes, the spirit qi in the starry sky is already so dense. I wonder how dense the spirit qi in the many continents in the central region is. On the deck, Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others said with a smile. Under normal circumstances, the spirit qi in the starry sky was very thin. Only after entering a continent would the spirit qi become denser. However, in the starry sky of the central region, the density of the spirit qi was not low. This was the difference between the central region and the other four regions. With such a density of spirit qi, it was no wonder that the number of powerhouses in the central region far exceeded that of the other four regions. A good cultivation environment would naturally be able to nurture experts better. Moreover, it was said that the development of martial arts in the central region was obviously better than that of the other four regions. Otherwise, Xiao Chun and the others would not have come all the way here to find an opportunity to break through to become rulers. In the cabin, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun sat opposite each other, drinking and chatting. Brother Xiao Chun, now that we've entered the central region, where are we going next? Chapter 3265. Compared to the other four regions, the situation in the central region was obviously much more complicated. This was because the number of rulers in the central region was far from what the other four regions could compare to. It was true that all the rulers in the central region belonged to the Star Lord's palace, but there was a big difference. These rulers were mainly divided into two camps. One was a lone wolf without any complicated background. Such rulers were only loyal to the Star Lord's palace and held real power in the Star Lord's palace. The other group, such as the two rulers of the Feng people, also belonged to the Star Lord's palace in name, but in reality, they were only there in name. They did not hold any important positions, and they did not even have any relationship with the Star Lord's palace. Only during special times would they appear in the Star Lord's palace. Other than the Star Lord's palace, the various major forces in the central region were even more intertwined. To be honest, the Star Lord's palace's control over the central region might not be as strong as Emperor Dong's palace's control over the eastern region. This did not mean that the Star Lord's palace was not strong, but the central region situation was very special. After all, as the center of the Fire Phoenix galaxy, almost all the major forces in the central region had extremely long legacies. With a deep foundation and complicated relationships, a delicate balance had long been formed after so many years. Even the Star Lord's palace did not want to break this balance, because once it was broken, it would be very troublesome. Along the way, Xiao Chun and the others did not encounter any interstellar pirates. After all, the people of the central region did not care about such things at all. Soon, they arrived at an unknown continent. It was huge and extremely prosperous. Before they entered, they could see spatial spirit boats and starships coming and going in an endless stream. This was the central region. Its population exceeded the total of the other four regions. Countless people wanted to take root in the central region. As for the reason, it was very simple. It was because the central region was easier for them to become stronger and had more opportunities. 10 Directions Continent? Isn't that where the Emperor Extremity Mountain is? This continent was called the 10 Directions Continent. Putting away the spatial spirit boat, the group found a small city at random. Lin Yun said softly. The Emperor Extremity Mountain was a treasure land that the old man Dong Wang had specially mentioned. It was also a place where one could break through to become a ruler. He asked Xiao Chun and Lin Yun to go there. Xiao Chun and Lin Yun naturally remembered the treasured land that Dong Wang had specially mentioned. He didn't expect his luck to be so good. The random continent he found turned out to be the 10 Directions Continent. Hearing this, Xiao Chun nodded with a smile and said, "That's right. Since we're here, we should go to the Emperor Extremity Mountain to have a look." Since he was already here, he would definitely go to the Emperor Extremity Mountain. After all, this was an opportunity to break through to become a ruler. However, it shouldn't be easy to enter the Emperor Extremity Mountain. These treasures are either in the hands of the Star Lord's palace or in the hands of those powerful forces. It doesn't matter. Let's pay a visit first. A treasured land like the Emperor Extremity Mountain naturally couldn't be entered casually. Moreover, in the central region, although Shao Chun and the others were very strong, they were no longer invincible. Under normal circumstances, the forces that controlled the treasured land of the Emperor Extremity Mountain would have a ruler overseeing it. After all, without a ruler overseeing it personally, it was impossible to control such a treasured land. Therefore, in the central region, Shao Chun and the others naturally couldn't act as unscrupulously as they did in the Scattered Star Sea. Let's pay a visit first. Shao Chun and Lin Yan discussed. However, while the two were discussing, a conversation at the next table instantly aroused the interest of Shao Chun and the others. It said that the opening of the Emperor Extremity Mountain this time has attracted a lot of people. That's for sure. After all, it's the Emperor Extremity Mountain, a place that many battle ancestor realm kings dream of. That's right. If one is lucky enough to enter and cultivate, the chances of breaking through to the Emperor realm will be higher. Even so, it's not that easy. Every time the Emperor Extremity Mountain opens, there are only a total of 20 spots. 10 of them are occupied by the Extreme Path Palace, and the other 10 can only be obtained through competition. Every time the Emperor Extremity Mountain opens, there will be a fierce battle. Many battle ancestor realm kings will fight for the remaining 10 spots. If one's strength isn't enough, then don't even think about it. The Extreme Path Palace was the huge sect that controlled the Emperor Extremity Mountain, and it was also the absolute overlord of the 10 Directions continent. It was said that the history of the Extreme Path Palace was comparable to the Foam People, but in terms of strength, it was inferior to the Foam People. Of course, even so, the Extreme Path Palace's strength was enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Eastern Emperor Palace. That was because the Extreme Path Palace had an Emperor Realm King overseeing it. Hearing this, Shao Chun and Lin Yan looked at each other. They didn't expect their luck to be so good. They actually managed to catch the opening of the Emperor Extremity Mountain. In this way, the possibility of entering the Emperor Extremity Mountain was much higher. As for the so-called competition, Shao Chun and Lin Yan weren't worried at all. At the Battle Ancestor Realm, Shao Chun and Lin Yan had absolute confidence in their strength. They didn't dare to say that they were invincible, but they were definitely in the top group of people. Even in the Central region, there weren't many Battle Ancestor Realm Kings that could be compared to the two of them. Thinking of this, Shao Chun took the initiative to stand up and go to the next table. He asked the few people with a smile, "Fellow Taoists, I wonder if you can tell me more about the opening of the Emperor Extremity Mountain?" Facing the sudden arrival of Shao Chun, the few people were stunned at first, but they soon started talking enthusiastically. Although these people have been talking about the Emperor Extremity Mountain, they had no intention of entering the Emperor Extremity Mountain at all. The reason was very simple. It was because these people's cultivation wasn't enough. Among them, the highest cultivation was only at the Ancient Era's level. They hadn't even reached the Divine Ancestor Realm. With such cultivation, they naturally couldn't enter the Emperor Extremity Mountain. Even if they entered, it would be useless. And Shao Chun was obviously a Battle Ancestor Realm King. Therefore, they naturally didn't dare to offend him. Actually, these few people's information about the Emperor Extremity Mountain was also all hearsay. However, they still knew the general time. After all, it wasn't a secret. No one would hide it. From these people, they found out that the opening of the Emperor Extremity Mountain would take place a month later. Because of the competition, there would be a spot battle in 5 days. As for the location, it would naturally be in the Extreme Path Palace. The experts of the Extreme Path Palace would be the judges to decide the ownership of the remaining 10 spots. Therefore, if Shao Chun and the others wanted to enter the Emperor Extremity Mountain, they would have to rush to the Extreme Path Palace within 5 days. Otherwise, they would have to wait for the next time. After chatting with a few people, Shao Chun roughly understood some information about the Emperor Extremity Mountain and the Extreme Path Palace. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. He didn't see any protective array, but there shouldn't be many people in the central region who would dare to cause trouble in the Extreme Path Palace. This was the foundation and momentum of a great force. Even without the protection of the formation, no one would dare to cause trouble here. Most of the people were stopped outside the Extreme Path Palace. Their cultivation levels were not high enough, so they did not even have the qualifications to enter the palace. They could only wait for the battle to begin and be a spectator. Without wasting any time, Xiao Qin's group quickly arrived at the mountain gate of Extreme Path Palace. At the mountain gate, there were over 100 Extreme Path Palace disciples in charge of receiving guests. The leader was an Extreme Path Palace elder with a divine ancestor cultivation base, allowing a Saint Ancestor Realm elder to welcome a Battle Ancestor Realm king. This was the benefit of being in a large force. Originally, when Holy Ancestor Realm powerhouses faced Battle Ancestor Realm kings, they had to be respectful. However, because this elder was a member of the Extreme Path Palace and had the backing of the Extreme Path Palace, even when facing a Battle Ancestor Realm king, he still had a calm expression and didn't have the slightest bit of respect. On the contrary, the Battle Ancestor Realm king was very polite. Just like the Battle Ancestor Realm king before, Xiao Qin's group arrived at the mountain gate. The Extreme Path Palace elder glanced at Xiao Qin and Lin Yun indifferently, and then said indifferently, "Name, identity." Xiao Qin and Lin Yun didn't pay much attention to the Extreme Path Palace's request. After all, this was their territory. Moreover, the Emperor Extremity Mountain belonged to the Extreme Path Palace, so there was nothing wrong with asking them to register. Soon, they finished registering their basic information. When the elder saw that Xiao Qin's group was from the eastern region, a mocking expression appeared on his face. It was obvious that he looked down on the people of the eastern region. This was actually very common in the central region. The martialists of the central region had always thought that they were the true rulers of the Fire Phoenix Galaxy. The people of the central region looked down on the martialists of the other 4 regions, including the eastern region and the Scattered Star Ocean. They thought that it was just a barbarian land, and the martialists, they were simply a group of country bumpkins who didn't understand the true meaning of martial arts. Faced with such a change, Xiao Qin and Lin Yun were naturally unhappy. Even if they had the backing of the Extreme Path Palace, they were still just Divine Ancestor Realm cultivators. A Divine Ancestor Realm martialist actually dared to look down on a Battle Ancestor Realm king. If it was any other place, it would be courting death. Not wanting to cause trouble, Xiao Qin and Lin Yun didn't say anything. They just stood there quietly without saying a word. After everything was settled, the elder said to a disciple beside him, "Take them to the back mountain and wait for the quota battle to begin." Hearing this, the disciple was stunned at first. Then he smiled and nodded. Xiao Qin didn't know that the back mountain wasn't a place to entertain Battle Ancestor Realm kings. The many Battle Ancestor Realm kings who came to the Extreme Path Palace were all arranged as special guest rooms. However, because Xiao Qin and the others weren't from the central region, they were from the eastern region, so the elder directly arranged for them to stay in the back mountain. Along the way to the back mountain, they didn't see a single person. In front of a simple thatched hut, the disciple in charge of leading the way said with a sneer, "Yes, you will stay here. When the quota battle begins, someone will come to inform you." Perhaps it was because of the influence of the elder, but when facing Xiao Qin and the others, the disciple still had an overbearing look. He was just a junior and an ordinary disciple of the Extreme Path Palace. His cultivation was as low as an ant, but he dared to speak to Xiao Qin like that. Not to mention Xiao Qin and Lin Yun. Even Long Qing and Lin Yuan couldn't bear it. "Kid, what did you say?" Lin Hu, who had the most violent temper, shouted angrily. His aura instantly exploded and enveloped the disciple. Under Lin Hu's pressure, the disciple's face instantly turned pale. With his cultivation, he couldn't even resist Lin Hu's aura. This was because Lin Hu didn't kill him. Otherwise, his aura alone would have crushed the disciple to death. However, what no one expected was that under Lin Hu's pressure, the disciple didn't learn his lesson. Instead, he was completely enraged. He clenched his teeth and shouted with a face full of anger. What do you want? This is the Extreme Path Palace. You dare to fight in the Extreme Path Palace? Do you want to die? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 32:67. A mere ordinary disciple didn't have the slightest bit of respect when facing a battle ancestor realm king. He even dared to speak rudely. This was naturally because Xiao Chun and the others were from the eastern region. If Xiao Chun and the others were battle ancestor realm kings from the central region, the situation would be completely different. Lin Yun said expressionlessly as she looked coldly at the disciple. Ahu, stop. Hearing Lin Yun's words, although Lin, who was still unable to restrain his anger, he slowly retracted his aura. Lin Yun's thoughts were simple. She didn't want to cause trouble in the Extreme Path Palace. Unfortunately, in the face of Lin Yun's forbearance, the disciple thought that he was afraid. When he thought of how a battle ancestor realm king would swallow his anger in front of him, the disciple's ego swelled to the extreme. There was a saying that if you want to destroy someone, you must first make them crazy. The disciple before him was like that. He had never been so proud before. Look, just because I'm a disciple of the Extreme Path Palace, even a battle ancestor realm king would have to give me some face. The smile on his face became even more arrogant. Looking at the disciple's smug expression, Lin Yuan and the others wanted nothing more than to chop him into pieces. If it wasn't for Lin Yun's words, they would have already killed him. Did he really think that they were afraid of the Extreme Path Palace? What a joke. They were only following Lin Yun's orders. Unlike Lin Yuan and the others, Lin Yun and Xiao Chen's expressions were calm. It wasn't worth it to get angry over such an ant. Ignoring the disciple, Xiao Chen and Lin who were about to walk into the wooden house. However, at that moment, the disciple still spoke recklessly. Ah, what a bunch of barbarians. Why did such a person come to our central region? I wonder what kind of parents would give birth to such a country bumpkin. Xiao Chun instantly stopped and turned to look at the disciple. Facing Xiao Chen's gaze, the disciple's heart tightened. After all, this was a battle ancestor realm king. However, after thinking about it, the disciple became unyielding. He was a disciple of the Extreme Path Palace. What was there to be afraid of? Would these country bumpkins from the eastern region dare to kill someone in the Extreme Path Palace? What a joke. Thinking of this, the disciple forced himself to stick out his chest and pretended to be fearless as he shouted. What? You want to kill me? Do you dare? I'm a disciple of the Extreme Path Palace. Xiao Chun looked at the disciple with pity after hearing what he said. He wondered what it meant to be naive and reckless. Initially, he wanted to kill this disciple with a casual blow. However, since he was going to kill this disciple anyway, he might as well settle the matter once and for all, including that elder. The disciples of the Extreme Path Palace sex elders. Lins of the Extreme Path Palace of the Extreme Path Palace of the Extreme Path Palace. To humiliate them, to T2s of them, to the battle, ancestor not from them, as groups his ancestor to them's palaces of the to them. Originally, he thought that it would be better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Unfortunately, there were some people who refused to shed tears until they saw the coffin. Do you really think that the Extreme Path Palace will protect you? Said Lin Yun of the Extreme Path Palace calmly to the disciple. He didn't show the slightest bit of anger. In Xiao Chen's opinion, the disciple was already a dead man. There was no point in getting angry at a dead man. Before he died, Xiao Chen wanted to tell him that the Extreme Path Palace couldn't protect him. In other words, the Extreme Path Palace wouldn't protect him at all. However, the disciple still didn't understand. Even after hearing Xiao Chen's words, he still had a proud look on his face. What? Do you think you can contend against the Extreme Path Palace with just a few of you? Wishful thinking. Forget it. I'll let you see for yourself. After saying that, Xiao Chen's body suddenly emitted a powerful aura. At this moment, Xiao Chen didn't suppress his aura anymore. Instead, he unleashed his full power. In an instant, The terrifying aura of a battle ancestor realm king shrouded the entire Extreme Path Palace. Since he was going to kill them, Xiao Qian wanted to kill the disciple and the elder in front of the upper echelons of the Extreme Path Palace. He wanted to show them that even a battle ancestor realm king from the East region was still a king. A king couldn't be humiliated. This wasn't a joke. As Xiao Qian's aura erupted, the disciple was stunned. Soon, from the depths of the Extreme Path Palace, a few other terrifying auras also soared into the sky. Then, a few figures appeared out of thin air. There were a total of 3 people. Without exception, they were all battle ancestor realm kings. They were the true upper echelons of the Extreme Path Palace. The elder from before couldn't be compared to them. When the 3 of them appeared, they didn't seem aggressive at all. Instead, they cupped their hands and spoke politely. "My friend, fighting is prohibited in the Extreme Path Palace. What happened? You can tell us. There's no need for this." The 3 of them were polite to Xiao Qian because of Xiao Qian's aura. Since he didn't hold back, and they were all battle ancestor realm kings, the 3 of them could clearly sense that Xiao Qian's cultivation was at the peak of the battle ancestor realm. He even seemed to have touched the threshold of the sovereign realm. Such a cultivation base could be said to be invincible among battle ancestor realm kings. Therefore, they naturally didn't want to offend such a powerhouse. Of course, the main reason was that there was no need to do so. If they offended someone like Xiao Qian because of a small matter, they would only do so if there was something wrong with their heads. Most of the time, the more powerful a person was, the more polite they would be. When they interacted with others, they would give off a refreshing feeling. On the contrary, the weaker the person, the more arrogant they were, the more arrogant they were. It was as if no one in this world was worthy of their attention. Wasn't the 3 upper echelons of the Extreme Path Palace a stark contrast to the elder and the disciple from before? Before Xiao Qian could answer, the disciple next to him spoke first after hearing what the 3 of them said. Disciple greets Supreme Elder. "This person doesn't respect the Extreme Path Palace and wants to kill me here. Supreme Elder, please uphold justice." Good heavens! The guilty party was complaining first. Before Xiao Qian could speak, the disciple had already made the accusation. However, Xiao Qian wasn't anxious at all. He only watched the disciples praise quietly. On the other hand, the 3 of them. After hearing these words, one of the old men frowned slightly. He looked at this disciple with some displeasure and said, "Impudent, you have no right to speak here. Stand aside." With a glance, he could tell that the disciple was just an ordinary disciple. There were 5 battle ancestor realm kings present. How could an ordinary disciple like him interrupt a conversation between battle ancestor realm kings? He didn't know the rules. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. However, to that disciple's surprise, the 3 utmost exalted elders did not berate Xiao Qian after hearing his words. Instead, they grew silent. What was going on? Wouldn't the 3 grand elders stop him from killing people in the Supreme Path Palace? Stupid. What was even more unexpected to this disciple was that after the 3 grand elders exhorted him for a moment, they actually turned around and scolded him. Not only did he not blame Xiao Qian, but he also pointed the spearhead at himself. Actually, with the eyesight of the 3 of them, they had already guessed what had happened. This was disrespect to the king of the war ancestor realm. You are simply an idiot. No matter what the reason is, you, a mere ordinary elder and an ordinary disciple, actually dared to be disrespectful to the war ancestor realm king. That was simply the biggest joke in the world. Even the Supreme Path Palace was not willing to provoke a war ancestor realm king. The price of provoking a war ancestor realm king was definitely not small. Although the Supreme Path Palace was not afraid of a direct confrontation with a war ancestor realm king, what if there was a war ancestor realm king secretly watching the Supreme Path Palace? What if a war ancestor realm king ambushed them from time to time or assassinated their disciples? Wouldn't they, the supreme elders, have to protect their disciples at all times? Moreover, although the Supreme Path Palace had an emperor, what kind of person was an emperor? They would not easily make a move. Because of this, unless it was absolutely necessary, the Supreme Path Palace would not provoke a War Ancestor Realm King. Most of the time, both sides would treat each other with respect. In fact, in order to gain the favor of a War Ancestor Realm King, the Supreme Path Palace did not hesitate to give out the same amount of quotas as the Emperor Extremity Mountain to many War Ancestor Realm Kings. Did the Supreme Path Palace not want to monopolize the Emperor Extremity Mountain? Of course not. The reason was that they could not. Glaring fiercely at that disciple, one of them shouted coldly, "Who is the elder in charge of receiving us today? Tell him to get his ass over here immediately." Soon, the elder in charge of receiving Xiao Chun and the others rushed over. He seemed to already know what had happened, so when he saw Xiao Chun and the three supreme elders, he did not panic at all. On the contrary, he had a calm expression as he bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Supreme Elder." Seeing this elder, the expressions of the three supreme elders changed. They were somewhat unsightly and somewhat helpless. How could it be him? They all thought so in their hearts. The three supreme elders' intentions were actually very simple at the beginning. This elder and disciple dared to be disrespectful to a War Ancestor Realm King. They indeed deserved to die. They just needed to find a reason to kill them. Chapter 3269. Killing an ordinary disciple was obviously not enough to appease Xiao Chen's anger. The elder had to die as well. It could be seen that the elder had a backer. Otherwise, the three supreme elders wouldn't be so biased towards him. But so what? Xiao Chen believed that as long as the Extreme Path Palace wasn't stupid, they would know what to do. It wasn't difficult to choose between offending the two peak kings of the War Ancestor Realm and the Emperor Dawn's palace behind them, or killing them. However, after hearing Xiao Chen's words, the first elder sneered before the three supreme elders could reply. "Kill me? Heh, I already said that you guys from the East region are country bumpkins. Try killing me if you can." As he spoke, he took a few steps forward as if he was waiting for Xiao Chen to make a move. Seeing the elder's arrogance, Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others were furious. The three supreme elders also frowned. How could the grandson of the supreme elder be so ungrateful? Even at this time, he still didn't know how to restrain himself. Let's contact the supreme elder first. The three supreme elders didn't like the elder, but they still had to protect him. After all, he was the grandson of the supreme elder. At the same time, Xiao Chen said indifferently after hearing the elder's words, "Killing you will dirty my hands. Don't worry, someone will do it. I don't need to do it." Xiao Chen turned to look at the three supreme elders as soon as he finished speaking and spoke plainly. "My request is simple. Your Extreme Path Palace will kill these two. After all, a king cannot be humiliated. If you can do it, this matter will be over." Killing the ordinary disciple wasn't a problem at all, but the trouble was with the elder. Hearing that, the white-haired elder said after a moment of silence, "We can kill this disciple immediately, but he is the grandson of the supreme elder of our Extreme Path Palace. Although he didn't say it directly, his meaning was obvious. It was impossible to kill the elder because he had a backer. As soon as he said that, a disdainful smile appeared on the elder's face. "Look, this is a country bumpkin from the eastern region. What can he do to me?" At the same time, a figure appeared on the field again. Seeing this figure, the elder hurriedly called out, "Grandpa." "Yes." The elder nodded slightly. He was the first supreme elder of the Extreme Path Palace. He was at the peak of the Warring Ancestor Realm and was the third strongest person in the Extreme Path Palace. His strength was second only to the Palace Master and the Ancestor. He nodded slightly at his grandson and then looked at Xiao Chun and Lin Yan. Seeing that the two of them were not any weaker than him, the first supreme elder said indifferently, "My Extreme Path Palace is willing to compensate for this matter. Why don't the two of you just let it go?" He already knew the ins and outs of the matter. This time, only Xiao Chun and Lin Yun came because it was a slot battle. As for Long Qing, Lin Yuan, and the others, they stayed at their residences. They waited quietly for the quota battle to begin. Soon, several Supreme Elders of the Extreme Path Palace appeared. Among them, the first Supreme Elder was naturally the leader. This time, the first Supreme Elder was in charge of the quota battle. This old thing is in charge of it. Seeing the first Supreme Elder, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with a strange light. He instinctively felt that this old thing was up to no good. Actually, Xiao Chen didn't know that this time, the first Supreme Elder didn't need to show up for the quota battle. He was the one who requested it. If he knew this, Xiao Chen was sure that this old thing was up to no good. His gaze swept across the crowd, but he didn't look at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. It was as if he had forgotten about the previous matter. Under the gazes of the crowd, the first Supreme Elder spoke with a solemn expression on his face. Everyone, there are some changes to the rules of the quota battle this time. It's no longer the same format as before. This time, the quota battle will be in the form of a free-for-all. This space is a battlefield. Everyone can fight as you wish. The last 10 people will obtain the quota to enter the Emperor Extremity Mountain. The rules were changed? Hearing this, apart from Xiao Chun and Lin Yun, everyone else looked calm. It was as if they already knew in advance. On the other hand, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun frowned slightly. The rules were suddenly changed. What was this old thing trying to do? Intuition told them that the change in the rules was definitely intentional. To put it bluntly, this was targeted at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. However, Xiao Chun and Lin Yun couldn't think of anything for the time being. Also, the rules had always been set by the Extreme Tao Palace. It was understandable that they changed the rules. Even if Xiao Chun and Lin Yun wanted to speak, they couldn't say anything. As soon as he finished speaking, the first Supreme Elder secretly glanced at Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. A murderous intent flashed in his eyes. You killed this old man's grandson. Today, you two will pay with your lives. It was indeed the first Supreme Elder's idea to change the rules. The reason was very simple. It was to target Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. Since it was very difficult for anyone to be a match for Xiao Chun and Lin Yun one-on-one, they would work together to kill the two of them. Therefore, the rules were changed from the original single elimination tournament to a free-for-all. Moreover, the first Supreme Elder had already discussed this with the other kings participating in the quota battle. After paying a hefty price, everyone expressed their willingness to help the first Supreme Elder kill Xiao Chun and Lin Yun. There were a total of 48 kings participating in the quota battle.